Chapter 478. Lu Ping shook his head with a serious expression and said, "That shouldn't be the case. That teleportation array is extremely well hidden, and the entrance has already been destroyed by me. If they didn't intentionally search for it, they would absolutely not be able to discover its location. However, with so many demon race cultivators hiding here, they must be plotting something. Although we've discovered their tracks now, we can't go to that teleportation array. Damn it!" Thinking up to here, Lu Ping couldn't help but curse again. Lu Ping originally wanted to send Yin Xianchu to the Middle Earth through that teleportation array, but he didn't expect that there were actually over 10 core forging stage demon cultivators hiding in the nearby sea. He didn't know what they were plotting, and one of them was an old acquaintance of Lu Ping. It was the late core forging stage primordial giant crocodile, Aoli, who had pursued Lu Ping in the deep sea demon region. It was precisely this powerful demon cultivator who discovered the whereabouts of Lu Ping's group of 3. With just a single strike, it allowed Lu Ping to once again witness the terror of a late core forging stage cultivator. It also allowed Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian to understand the gap between them and a true late core forging stage expert cultivator. Actually, Lu Ping had some guesses about the reason why the demon race was hiding here. Seeing Lu Ping in deep thought, Ji Xianxian couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother Lu, have you thought of something?" Lu Ping said seriously, "I think I should know why they're hiding here." Seeing Ji Xuanxuan's questioning gaze, Lu Ping said, "There was originally a teleportation array that led to the deep sea demon region." Just as Lu Ping spoke up to hear, Yin Xianchu suddenly raised his head and looked towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping nodded and said, "I once saw you return to the deep sea demon region through the teleportation array after meeting with Marshal Uncle Xianin here." Yin Xianchu suddenly interrupted Lu Ping and said, "How do you know that it leads to the deep sea demon region?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then said, "A few days ago, the sect issued an order to search for AOU's traces in the North Sea. I wanted to avenge Marshal Uncle Li, so I thought of this, so I took the risk to activate the transmission array. As a result, I arrived at the deep sea demon region. Afterwards, I was chased by the demon clan. In desperation, I destroyed the transmission array and hid in the undersea mountain range. It was only until De Gui advanced to the core forging stage that he sent the traction array disk of the single-person transmission array I set up in the undersea mountain range back to Huangli Island. Fortunately, I was able to return before the demon clan broke through the island's protective array." Lu Ping looked at Yin Xuanchu's slightly excited expression and continued, "I suspect that the demon clan is taking advantage of the confrontation between Zhenling and Xianling sect. Our sects Tian Shui Laozu and Xianling sects Dao Yan Laozu aren't on Huanyu Island to restore the transmission array here. This way, the demon clan will have another secret channel to launch attacks on the various sects in the North Sea. After all, the reason why we wanted to enter the Eastern Sea through the transmission array on Huanyu Island was because these two Laozu weren't on Huanyu Island." At this moment, Lu Ping and Ji Xianxian heard Yin Xianchu say in a low voice, "This transmission array was originally secretly constructed by Mother for the sake of meeting Father. Father knew of the existence of this transmission array, but Mother never told Father about it. Father also never had the idea of using this transmission array. Mother never betrayed the demon clan because of Father, and Father never betrayed the human clan because of Mother." Ji Xianxian patted Yin Xuanchu's shoulder and didn't say anything else. As the three of them spoke, the hazy silhouette of Huanyu Island had already appeared on the surface of the sea. Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief and said, "I didn't think that we would still have to charge into Huanyu Island. I only hope that there won't be any slip-ups this time." Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu both knew that the secret transmission array discovered by Lu Ping just so happened to be occupied by a group of demon clan. Although the secret of the transmission array wasn't exposed, Yin Xianchu couldn't use the transmission array to head to the Midlands. He could only prepare for the worst and place all his hopes on the transmission array that led to the Eastern Sea from Huanyu Island. However, just as the three of them were immersed in their thoughts, a long howl suddenly came from the surface of the sea behind them. Their expressions changed, and when they turned around to look, a green streak of light had already streaked across the sky. Before the hull dissipated, the streak of light had already landed in front of the three of them. Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu revealed vigilant expressions, but Lu Ping's expression didn't change. He bowed first and said, "Disciple greets martial uncle Xianchu." Ji Xianxian also bowed. Yin Xuanchu's expression fluctuated, but in the end, he still bowed towards Spiritual Master Xianchu. Spiritual Master Xianchu glanced at Yin Xianchu indifferently and said coldly, "When your father and mother got married back then, I already expected this outcome. However, I didn't think that I would be the one to carry out this matter today. Don't hold any resentment towards the sect. Our sect is also forced to do this." Yin Xianchu clenched his fists tightly. His lowered head hid the expression on his face. Ji Xianxian hesitated for a moment, but he still took a small step in front of Yin Xianchu, blocking half of Yin Xuanchu's body. He bowed deeply and said, "Martial uncle, junior brother Xianchu is the only descendant of martial uncle Xianin. There are no outsiders here, so please let junior brother Xianchu go." When Spiritual Master Xianchu saw Ji Xianxian like this, although his expression was indifferent, his eyes emitted a deep light. In the end, he sighed and said, "It's impossible to let him go. I, Xianchu, am in charge of the sect's rules, and I've never shown any mercy. However, so be it. Today, I'll make the decision. As long as you allow me to personally dissolve your golden core and shatter your core space, I'll spare your life. However, from today onwards, you'll have to spend the rest of your life under house arrest on Tianling Mountain. In this way, the senior and junior brothers who were implicated by you will also receive a lighter punishment in the sect." Ji Xianxian said anxiously, "Martial uncle, how can this be? Wouldn't shattering the core space be a fate worse than death for us cultivators?" Spiritual Master Xianchu didn't comment on Ji Xuanchuan's pleas. He only looked at Yin Xianchu and said, "What do you think?" Yin Xuanchu's fists within his sleeves clenched even tighter, and a trace of green faintly appeared on his white knuckles. In the end, Yin Xianchu seemed to have made some sort of decision. His tensed body suddenly relaxed, and he said bitterly, "I'm willing, martial uncle Xianchu." Lu Ping suddenly took a step forward and interrupted Yin Xuanchu's words. He said, "Disciple has been comprehending swordsmanship in recent years and has gained some insights. Not long ago, I was lucky enough to kill a late-stage core-forging demon race cultivator. I've always heard that martial uncle's magic power is boundless, and that you're the number one person in our sect's second-generation disciples below the 3 truths and 4 spirits. Disciple has overestimated his own abilities, and would like to ask martial uncle for advice on swordsmanship. I hope that martial uncle can grant my wish." Ji Xianxian stared at Lu Ping's back dumbfoundedly. Yin Xianchu suddenly raised his head and opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Spiritual Master Xianchu also seemed to have been stirred up by Lu Ping's presumptuous words. He looked at Lu Ping and asked in amusement and curiosity, "What did you say? This is simply preposterous." Buzz. The golden scales sword hovered above Lu Ping's head and pointed at Spiritual Master Xianchu from afar. He performed a sword salute of a junior, and used his actions to once again verify what he had just said. Spiritual Master Xianchu suddenly became furious, but he forcibly suppressed his anger. Instead, he laughed and said, "Good, good, good. As expected of senior sister Lu Tianling's good disciple. You're just as lawless as you are. Don't think that you can be complacent just because you defeated a late-stage core-forging demon race cultivator. That late-stage core-forging demon race cultivator is just an existence at the bottom. Didn't you want to spar with the old man? The old man will fulfill your wish today. I'll let you see the true difference between late-stage core-forging demon race and mid-stage core-forging demon race. I'll also let you understand that the difference in strength between late-stage core-forging demon race and mid-stage core-forging demon race will be even greater due to the difference in the quality of the second type of spirit treasure." Yin Xianchu suddenly said, "Senior brother Lu, don't fight with martial uncle Xianchu. I'll go back with him." What answered Yin Xianchu was a sky-shaking sword cry from the golden scales sword above Lu Ping's head. Ji Xianxian grabbed Yin Xianchu and fled in the direction of Universe Island with all his might. At the same time, he said, "Let's go. Don't waste the opportunity that senior brother Lu has earned for you. How can you be content if you don't give it a try?" Yin Xianchu allowed Ji Xianxian to pull him away. When he turned his head, he only saw the golden brilliance that filled the sky, forming a huge vortex in the sky. The sword light within the vortex formed a huge sword formation in an orderly manner, covering half of the sky behind Yin Xianchu. At the same time, it also blocked spiritual master Xuanchu's path of pursuit. Yin Xianchu seemed to see Lu Ping's unwavering determination from his back. Lu Ping's first move was the limit of his current swordsmanship. The rotating sword formation, with the golden scale sword at the center, surged towards spiritual master Xianchu. Spiritual master Xianchu stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the orderly sword formation that Lu Ping had mastered pressing towards him from all directions. Spiritual master Xianchu, who was forcibly suppressing his rage, couldn't help but have a trace of solemnity in his eyes. Lu Ping, a third-generation disciple of Jinling who had just advanced to the 5th layer of the core forging realm. Spiritual master Xianchu, a veteran late-stage core forging realm expert of Jinling who was at the peak of the 8th layer of the core forging realm. In the distance, where the sea and the sky met, a white mark suddenly appeared. The white mark quickly rushed towards the two sides of the battle. When it got close, it was Spiritual Master Su Weihong of Xianling's sect who had rushed over with Spiritual Master Xianchu. Seeing that the sword light that filled the sky actually included him, Su Weihong was startled. Then, a look of joy appeared on his face. If Lu Xianping was here, then Yin Xianchu shouldn't be far away. The current situation was obviously because of Yin Xianchu. This Lu Xianping actually didn't hesitate to challenge a famous cultivator among the second-generation disciples of Jinling. Su Weihong shouted, "Lu Xianping, how dare you! You actually dare to attack your own sect's senior!" Su Weihong deliberately roared when he spoke. His voice spread in all directions, as if he wanted to let all the people of the North Sea know about this news. Su Weihong's eyes turned and he hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Martial Uncle Xianchu, I'll temporarily block your sect's junior brother Lu Xianping. You first go after that vile spawn Yin Xianchu and clean up the sect." "Scram! Scram!" What answered him was Lu Ping and Spiritual Master Xuanchu's angry shouts. A powerful divine sense attack carried a huge pressure and rushed towards Su Weihong. Su Weihong's face suddenly turned deathly pale. Ding 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 ding, he stepped on the small boat under his feet and took a few steps back. The silver boat seemed to have encountered a hurricane on the sea and was pushed back more than 100 feet in an instant. Chapter 479. Su Weihong's face was gloomy. He turned around to steer the flying boat around Lu Ping's sword formation. However, at this time, Lu Ping seemed to have reached the limit of his control over the sword formation. A huge whirlpool of swordsmanship roared down, engulfing Su Weihong along with it. "Lu Xianping, how dare you!" Su Weihong's eyes twitched. He waved his hand and released a ray of light to protect himself. He turned around and hid behind Taoist Xianxu. He didn't believe that Lu Ping would really kill him, but it was possible that Lu Ping would seriously injure him. However, he also knew that Taoist Xianxu wouldn't ignore him. With Taoist Xianxu, a famous late-stage core forging cultivator in the North Sea, Su Weihong didn't think that Lu Ping would be his opponent. Looking at Lu Ping's sword formation, Taoist Xianxu's expression became more and more dignified. As Lu Ping's cultivation increased, and his understanding of the sword formation became more profound, the power of the sea of all river sword art in Lu Ping's hands became more and more earth-shattering. He was worthy of being an outstanding existence among the third-generation disciples. Even the third-generation disciples who had cultivated for hundreds of years and reached the 6th layer of core forging might not be able to comprehend this sword technique. At the very least, his disciple, Xianxiang, was far from being able to reach this level. Taoist Xian Shu looked at this martial nephew in front of him with a complicated expression. His clothes fluttered without any wind, and layers of protective gang qi expanded from his body. 7 layers spread out in a row. These 7 layers of protective gang qi surged with each other, forming a vague wall of countless giant trees in front of Taoist Xian Shu. 10,000 wood barrier! Lu Ping's pupils shrunk. Enlightened Master Xian Shu's protective aura was condensed from 7 extraordinary items, raising his defensive skill to the level of a great skill. Lu Ping had seen the wood forest wall, used by a Wang clan cultivator in the Eastern Sea's 3 Clans Island. But back then, that Wang clan cultivator's wood forest wall was only at the level of a lesser skill. Compared to Enlightened Master Xian Shu's wood forest wall, the difference was like heaven and earth. Taoist Xian Shu naturally wouldn't use his protective aura to resist Lu Ping's sword technique. This was just a precaution. From this, it can be seen that Taoist Xian Shu was very cautious and attached importance to Lu Ping. Master Xian Shu walked a few steps on the surface of the sea in a mysterious manner. At the same time, his hands quickly formed a few hand seals. He opened his mouth and chanted. Then, he pointed at the surface of the sea. A ball of green light the size of a human head entered the sea. Then, the surface of the sea began to crackle like boiling water. Lu Ping scanned the area with his divine sense, and soon noticed the changes in the water. Countless sword rays suddenly changed their direction and pointed downward as Lu Ping made a series of hand seals. Taoist Xian Shu's face finally showed a trace of surprise. To be able to respond so quickly, it was obvious that Lu Ping's divine sense had already reached the level of a late-stage core forging cultivator. At this time, Taoist Xian Shu's spell had already been completed. It was too late to make any changes. Countless seaweeds and seaweed broke through the surface of the water. Like a group of demons, they flew towards the sword lights dancing in the sky. The sword lights in the sword formation quickly slashed towards the branches and vines. However, they found that these things were not as weak as they had imagined. The tough branches often needed 4 or 5 slashes from the psychic sword light to break. However, after these 4 or 5 slashes, the psychic sword light contained a trace of Lu Ping's true essence was almost consumed by more than half. Fortunately, Lu Ping had already made some changes to the sword formation. Countless sword lights crisscrossed in the sky. The entire 100 rivers into the sea sword formation simultaneously transformed into 18 small sword formations, each fighting independently. Although each small sword formation was dozens of times weaker than the big sword formation, it was much more flexible. The sword lights in each small sword formation struck the mutated seaweed and retreated. In the blink of an eye, Taoist Xian Shu's divine sense was crushed by Lu Ping's 18 sword formations. Then, the 18 sword formations clanged loudly, and the flying sword lights instantly formed a complete 100 rivers into the sea sword formation. Taoist Xian Shu smiled and said, "You can control the formation so skillfully. I forgot that as an alchemy grandmaster, you must have a divine sense that far surpasses cultivators of the same level. If I'm not wrong, your divine sense is not inferior to a cultivator in the 8th or 9th layer of the core forging realm." Lu Ping smiled indifferently and said, "You flatter me, martial uncle. Please enlighten me." Taoist Xian Shu laughed and said, "Your strength is indeed not bad among cultivators of the same level. Perhaps you really killed Taoist Master Lu Hai in a head-on battle. However, if you want to challenge me with just that, then you're still far from it. Ever since you advanced to the core forging realm and returned to the North Sea, everything has been too smooth. You almost never suffered any setbacks. Fine, today I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of senior sister Lu Tianling. It's better than being arrogant in the future and falling into someone else's trap." Lu Ping didn't say anything. The 100 rivers into the sea sword formation slowly descended and surrounded Taoist Xian Shu from all directions. A slingshot suddenly appeared in Taoist Xian Shu's hand. 2 small wooden branches extended outwards, each with a belt made of unknown beast tendons. The 2 belts finally fused together and formed a leather cushion to hold the pill. Taoist Xian Shu held the wooden bow in his left hand. He pinched the leather cushion with his right hand and pulled it back. The two beast tendons immediately elongated. At the same time, a green light flashed on the leather cushion in his right hand. The green light grew brighter and brighter until it formed a green ball of light the size of an eyeball. Taoist Xianshu loosened his right hand and the green ball of light disappeared in a flash. Then, an explosion rang out in the middle of Lu Ping's sword formation. Lu Ping's expression changed. In his divine sense, he discovered that after the green ball of light smashed into several psychic sword lights, it suddenly exploded. The psychic sword lights around the green ball of light were instantly extinguished. A space with a circumference of 3 feet appeared in the center of the green ball of light's explosion. Lu Ping directed the sword formation to close in on Taoist Xianshu. Countless psychic sword lights cut deep marks on Taoist Xianshu's aura shield, but they quickly recovered. Taoist Xianshu's figure flashed, and a series of green lights flashed. Lu Ping's divine sense changed rapidly. He directed the sword formation with the intention of blocking Taoist Xianshu in the middle of the sword formation's encirclement. Unknowingly, Taoist Xianshu had already appeared in the space of 3 feet that the green ball of light had exploded. A look of joy flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. The surrounding psychic sword lights suddenly reversed and rushed towards Taoist Xianshu from all directions to kill him. Taoist Xianshu seemed to have deliberately entered this space to give the opportunity to Lu Ping. Just when the countless psychic sword lights were about to turn Taoist Xianshu into a hedgehog, Taoist Xianshu suddenly raised his hands. Just like a dandelion blown away by a gentle breeze, countless green light spots fluttered in the air and accurately stuck to the psychic sword lights that were rushing towards him from all directions from Lu Ping. Lu Ping's heart jumped. This was exactly the same method that Taoist Lu Hai had used to fight against his own great spiritual sword technique. After that, Lu Ping discovered the difference between the two. These green light spots did not absorb the Jingyuan contained in the psychic sword lights, causing the psychic sword lights to self-destruct. Instead, they directly exploded and completely destroyed the psychic sword lights. Then countless sounds of explosions rang out like firecrackers. The psychic sword lights that filled the sky were all detonated by the green light spots in the sky. Lu Ping's great spiritual sword technique was so easily broken by Taoist Xianshu. Looking at Taoist Xianshu's faint smile, Lu Ping's face was as calm as water. The golden scale sword whimpered and retreated, circling around Lu Ping like a little kid who had been greatly wronged. Although the great spiritual sword formation is exquisite and powerful, but in your hands, it is only SOSO, Taoist Xianshu faintly said. Then he frowned. His body still stood still. Suddenly, the 10,000 woods wall in front of him grew countless branches and weaved them into a vine shield. Then, with a poo sound, the vine shield was pierced through, and a dark blue sword light flashed in front of the 10,000 woods wall. Shapeless sword art, I didn't expect you to practice this set of magic arts. Rumor has it that in order to refine this set of magic arts, not only do you need an invisible flying sword, you also need a strange natural wonder called shapeless water. It seems that your luck is not small, to be able to obtain this kind of natural treasure. Unfortunately, your sword art is incomplete and can only reach the minor spiritual level. Moreover, if your flying sword was a psychic magic treasure, it would be fine, but it is just an ordinary magic treasure. Its quality is too low, and it is far from being able to deal with the old man. Taoist Xianshu was indeed worthy of being a veteran late-core forging cultivator who had been famous for hundreds of years. With just a glance, he was able to see through most of Lu Ping's methods. While breaking Lu Ping's spiritual power, he also casually commented on it. Lu Ping's face was gloomy. Even though he had the strength to kill Taoist Lu Hai, but in front of this kind of famous cultivator, Lu Ping felt that he was at his wits' end. Thinking back to the primordial crocodile Taoist Aoli he encountered at the bottom of the sea, it was only a casual attack. Lu Ping, Ji Xianxian, and Yin Xianqi joined forces to resist it, but in the end, they still retreated in a sorry state. They were almost surrounded by the monster cultivators who rushed over. If it wasn't for the fact that these monster cultivators seemed to have some misgivings and didn't want to expose too much, it was likely that Lu Ping and the other two would not have been able to escape unscathed. Taoist Xian Shu sneered and suddenly leaped up, saying, "Since it's an instruction, Martial Nephew Lu will also receive a move from the old man. In the future, Senior Martial Sister Lu will not blame the old man for not fulfilling his responsibility as a martial uncle." Taoist Xian Shu flew in the air and a peachwood longsword suddenly appeared in his hand. He pointed it towards the sky and a green lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket appeared out of thin air and landed on the peachwood longsword. As the lightning flickered, Taoist Xian Shu immediately slashed the wooden sword and shouted towards Lu Ping, "Lightning guiding technique, quick!" Just when Taoist Xian Shu's longsword was pointed towards Lu Ping felt a great crisis descending upon him. The Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash in his core space rapidly trembled, as if it was trying its best to break free from the shackles of the gold core. How could Lu Ping dare to reveal this treasure in front of others? Looking at the green lightning bolt rushing towards him, Lu Ping did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. The golden scale sword once again let out a long cry. A white sword light that reached the sky seemed to want to cut open a door in this part of the world and slash towards the green lightning bolt. At the same time, on the surface of the sea dozens of miles away in the direction that Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu had escaped to, a violent spiritual energy fluctuation suddenly rang out along with a deafening roar. This time, Lu Ping's expression finally changed drastically. Chapter 480. The green thunder that had been shattered by the true essence one sword strike passed through the golden scale sword's shadow and condensed back together. The color of the green thunder seemed to have faded a little, but it still contained a tyrannical power. Lu Ping's face was filled with panic as he leaped back in the direction of the explosion. At the same time, a small flag appeared in his hand and he waved it in front of him. A layer of black water curtain appeared in front of him. However, as soon as the green lightning came into contact with the black water curtain, it was easily torn apart by the green lightning in the midst of a series of electric sparks. Sage Xian Shu looked at the small flag in Lu Ping's hand that was constantly waving the black water curtain. He said with some surprise, "Water control flag? I didn't expect the mystic flame to let you take away this treasure from the inheritance space." Before Lu Ping could reply, when the green lightning finally broke through the black light curtain of the water control flag, Lu Ping's true Dipper Chi suddenly bloomed layer by layer like a lotus. The transformation of the water curtain true Dipper Chi caused Lu Ping to be wrapped in a Tier 6 lotus flower. This time, the green lightning that broke through the black water curtain of the water control flag was no longer as powerful as before. It was firmly blocked by the blue Tier 6 lotus flower outside the true Dipper Chi protection. Sage Xian Shu looked at the lotus flower that Lu Ping's true Dipper Chi protection in amazement. He asked curiously, "The water curtain true Dipper Chi can have such a magical transformation? In this way, the defense of the 6th layer true Dipper Chi protection can actually catch up to the old man's 7th layer true Dipper Chi protection. This is really strange. When your teacher condensed the true Dipper Chi protection, he did not have such a magical power like yours." When Sage Xian Shu saw that Lu Ping could actually withstand his attack, he kept the peachwood sword in his hand and did not attack again. Lu Ping gave Sage Xian Shu a deep look. After swallowing a precious elixir to recover his true essence, his pale face recovered a little. He turned around and rushed toward the source of the heaven and earth's spiritual energy fluctuation dozens of miles behind him. When Sage Xian Shu saw that Lu Ping was leaving, he did not stop him. Instead, he turned around and looked behind him. Su Weihong had been hiding behind Sage Xian Shu before the battle between Lu Ping and Sage Xian Shu. It was unknown when Su Weihong had fainted behind Sage Xian Shu. Taoist Master Xian Shu thought for a moment, but didn't act to save him. Instead, he pointed a finger and the small boat that Taoist Master Su Weihong was controlling floated towards Taoist Master Xian Shu. Taoist Master Xian Shu threw Su Weihong into the small boat and stood on the surface of the sea without moving. His eyes were looking towards a direction several dozen li away as he muttered, "As fellow disciples of the same sect, this old man has already done his best. Whether or not you can escape in the end will depend on your own luck. In this way, even if you all die, the sect will not have to bear the reputation of killing their own disciples." Lu Ping immediately used his escape technique. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a puddle of water as he rapidly flew across the surface of the sea. At this moment, Lu Ping was no longer in the mood to be complacent about receiving Sage Xianxu's attack. He never thought that there would actually be someone who had predicted their destination and set up an ambush for Yin Xianxu and Ji Zixuan when they approached Huanyu Island. To Lu Ping, a distance of dozens of miles was nothing more than a moment's work. However, when Lu Ping was 7 or 8 miles away from the battlefield, he stopped using his escape technique. Lu Ping swept his divine sense outwards, and the scene that was several miles away was immediately reflected in his divine sense. "Ouyang Weijian, you are a famous cultivator of the North Sea. How could you be in cahoots with the scum of the Overturned Seas gang? Could it be that your Xianling sect has already colluded with the Overturned Seas gang?" Standing in front of Ji Xianxian were 3 puppets whose strength was not below that of the core forging realm. Under Ji Xuanxuan's command, the 3 puppets fearlessly charged towards the person in front of them. Around Ji Xianxian and his 3 puppets, a black shadow moved from east to west, attacking the enemies in front of them. The black shadow would often retreat after a single strike, circle around the 3 puppets, and then attack from another direction. This was precisely the killing technique that Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianxu used with great rapport. Ji Xianxian used the fearless charge of the puppets, while Yin Xianxu was responsible for restraining and disturbing the enemy. When the 2 of them worked together, they would often cause their opponents to be distracted and lose sight of one another, allowing them to defeat opponents who were stronger than them. However, this time, the 2 of them seemed to be unable to cooperate with each other. This was because the person obstructing them wasn't just Ouyang Weijian. There were also 5 or 6 core forging realm cultivators whose cultivation was similar to theirs. Humph, your words are quite unreasonable. Why can't my Overturned Seas gang cooperate with Xianling sect? On the contrary, one of you is actually the descendant of a human and a demon. This is the true person in the cultivation world who should be killed. My Overturned Seas gang is enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens, while you, Jinling, are the one who colludes with a monster and harbors filth. A tall cultivator directed the crowd to cooperate with Ouyang Weijian to firmly block Yin Xianxu and Yin Xianxu. Then, they began to flank them from both sides. Everyone supported each other, and their cooperation was quite exquisite. Gradually, they surrounded Yin Xianxu and Ji Xianxian, and gradually reduced the range of Yin Xuanxu's movements, forcing the 2 of them to be unable to fully display their cooperation. Seeing that victory was within his grasp, the Overturned Seas gang cultivator who spoke earlier said to Yin Xianxu complacently, "I've long since expected that you, Junling, are unwilling to bear the reputation of murdering your own clan's disciples and want to let you go. In this case, for the sake of the human cultivators of the North Sea, my Overturned Seas gang may have to slay demons and eliminate devils. We'll talk about it after we kill a monster like you. As for the other one, I believe that Brother Ouyang would also be happy to have one less competitor in the North Sea." Ouyang Weijian remained silent, but the flowing wind sword in his hand became increasingly swift and fierce. It even forced the Overturned Seas gang cultivators who were assisting him to the side to be unable to help. The leader of the Overturned Seas gang had a rather displeased expression on his face, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Instead, he directed the crowd to close in on the 2 of them, further compressing the space that Yin Xianxu had to deal with. Seeing that the 2 of them were in an increasingly precarious situation, Lu Ping, who was several kilometers away, still had no intention of helping them. In reality, enlightened Master Xianxu was known in Jinling as the number 1 person below the 3 truths and 4 spirits. Among the late core forging cultivators of the North Sea, his strength was considered extremely tyrannical. Just now, Lu Ping had a sudden inspiration. At the last moment, he had used the white jade lotus on his protective stellar energy to block enlightened Master Xian Shu's cyan lightning. This had already consumed most of Lu Ping's spiritual essence, but this was already extremely valuable. However, Lu Ping had previously used the white jade lotus in conjunction with the water-controlling flag to block enlightened Master Ao Li's attack in the deep sea demon region. Now, he realized that if he used the white jade lotus in conjunction with his protective stellar energy, the power it could display would probably be even greater. Unfortunately, Lu Ping didn't have the time to ponder these things right now. Once Lu Ping was able to combine this natal magic treasure with the magical power that he cultivated, its power would undoubtedly increase by several folds. He also wouldn't have been injured by enlightened Master Xian Shu's all-out attack after expending so much of his spiritual essence. Fortunately, when the green thunder exploded on Lu Ping's protective stellar energy, the 7 treasures thunder calabash in the core space also spat out a trace of 7-colored thunder light, which followed along Lu Ping's spiritual essence and covered the protective stellar energy. When the raging green thunder light above the lotus stellar energy encountered the 7-colored thunder light hidden in Lu Ping's spiritual essence, a lot of the green thunder light was inexplicably absorbed by the 7-colored thunder light, reducing the damage to Lu Ping's protective stellar energy. Lu Ping first fought with the demon clan cultivators on Huangli Island, and then killed enlightened Master Lu Hai. His spiritual essence was already exhausted. After that, Lu Ping and the others only spent half a day to heal their injuries and restore their spiritual essence. Despite Lu Ping's supply of high-quality medicinal pills, they immediately fled to Huanyu Island and fought with enlightened Master Xian Shu. Even though Lu Ping had smelted the Xianyuan heavy water and his spiritual essence was unimaginably vigorous, it still couldn't support such a method of use. Previously, when Lu Ping arrived, he saw that Yin Xianchu and Ji Zixuan were temporarily fine, so he hid and first recovered the spiritual essence in his body that had been depleted. However, when Lu Ping sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea and was about to circulate his spiritual essence, he first spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood. Lu Ping secretly sighed. In the end, he still couldn't completely withstand enlightened Master Xian Shu's attack of the green thunder light. Previously, if it wasn't for the 7 treasures thunder calabash secretly dispelling it, and if it wasn't for the fact that Lu Ping was anxious about the life and death of his 2 friends, he momentarily forgot to check the injuries in his body. Perhaps, in front of enlightened Master Xian Shu, Lu Ping would already be unable to contain the injuries in his body. Chapter 481. With a crack, one of Ji Xuanxuan's puppets was shattered by the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang. Ouyang Weijian's flowing wind sword was like an all-pervasive breeze, taking advantage of the gap created by the puppet's destruction to blow countless sword lights in. Ji Xuanxuan's expression changed. He shook the cloth bag in his hand and another puppet flew out, blocking the gap created earlier. However, this puppet was clearly only at the late stage of the blood condensation realm and was far inferior to the previous puppet. It only took a few attacks from the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang before it shattered into pieces. Previously, controlling the 3-core forging stage puppets had already reached Ji Xuanxuan's limit. The consumption of a large amount of spiritual sense caused Ji Xuanxuan's originally pale face to be even more abnormally bright red. After the 2 puppets were shattered, Ji Xianxian was no longer able to contain the injuries in his body. Blood dripped down from the corner of his mouth, dyeing the clothes in front of him red. However, how could Ji Xianxian still care about the injuries on his body at this moment? After the puppet shattered, the 2 of them were no longer able to resist the attacks of the 6 opponents. Ouyang Weijian seized the opportunity to execute the Wind Flow Sword of the Merry Wind 18 swords and cut through the defense of the 2 in one go. His Wind Flow Sword was known for its speed, and after breaking through the defense of the 2, Yin Xianchu, who had been moving around in all directions, was instantly entangled by him. Ji Xianxian gritted his teeth and took out a shining bronze mirror. He rushed to the position of the puppet that was destroyed earlier and temporarily blocked the other party's attacks. The attacks of Ouyang Weijian and the members of the overturned sea gang did not have the slightest effect on Ji Xuanxuan's golden light mirror. On the contrary, a few rays of sword light and other colorful spells suddenly shot out from the golden light mirror, counterattacking Ouyang Weijian and the members of the overturned sea gang. These attacks were the same attacks that Ouyang Weijian and the others had used to attack Ji Xianxian. Ji Xuanxuan's magic treasure was actually able to reflect the attacks. Ji Xianxian shouted in a low voice. "Now!" Ouyang Weijian's expression changed. He didn't care about the few flowing wind sword lights that were bounced back by the golden light mirror. He turned the flowing wind sword in his hand and formed a huge wind cocoon around Ouyang Weijian, wrapping him up completely. At the same time, his warning voice came from the wind cocoon. "Be careful!" At that moment, the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction were in the midst of defending against the attacks reflected by the golden mirror of light. However, as they were utilizing various techniques to defend against the reflected attacks, Ji Xuanxuan's shout suddenly rang out in their ears. The hearts of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction grew tense, and they raised their heads to look in Ji Xuanxuan's direction. Coincidentally, they saw the golden mirror of light above Ji Xuanxuan's head shining with a dazzling light. Instantly, they felt a stabbing pain coming from their eyes and tears flowed uncontrollably from their eyes. It was as though the entire world was covered in gold. The members of the Overturning Seas faction were all ruthless people who had survived through life and death battles. By now, Ouyang Weijian's warning had arrived. Naturally, they wouldn't panic just because their eyes were temporarily blinded. However, just as they spread out their divine senses, they discovered that not only were the golden lights temporarily blinded, even their divine senses were distorted. They were unable to sense the situation around them. Only then did the members of the Overturning Seas faction panic slightly. However, at that moment, a ghost-like figure suddenly leapt about within the golden light. Two miserable cries rang out in succession. The remaining 3 members of the Overturning Seas faction were terrified. They used all of their defensive techniques without any regard for anything else, afraid that they would be ambushed by the other party in this situation where they couldn't see and their divine senses were distorted. As expected, another "pu" sound rang out, followed by a muffled grunt. Instantly, the members of the Overturning Seas faction noticed that their divine senses had returned to normal. When they opened their eyes, they could finally see what was happening before them, despite the stinging pain in their eyes. However, the scene before them shocked the cultivator leading the Overturning Seas faction. In that short period of time, one of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction had been beheaded. He was beyond dead. As for the other cultivator, his chest had been stabbed by a sword and he floated on the surface of the ocean. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Even if he could survive, his core space had been broken and he could only become a cripple. In addition, there was another cultivator whose face was pale and filled with lingering fear. The shield before his chest had been pierced, leaving a hole in it. The wind cocoon that was enveloped by the flowing wind sword light instantly scattered, revealing an expressionless Ouyang Weijian. The expression of the cultivator in charge of the Overflowing Seas gang contorted. Ouyang Weijian seemed to know what was going to happen to the two of them when Ji Xianxian brought out the golden light mirror. Despite Ouyang Weijian's warning, the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang still roared at Ouyang Weijian in a low voice. "Why didn't you mention that the two of them had such a divine ability? What was originally in the bag had turned out to be an unforeseen event. 2 mid-stage core forging realm cultivators had fallen one after another. Even if the Overturning Seas faction had the East Sea Crystal Palace as their backer, this was still a heavy loss for the Overturning Seas faction. Naturally, Ouyang Weijian wouldn't say that he had suffered under the divine power of these 2 cultivators. He pointed his flowing wind sword at them from afar and said coldly, "If I were you, I would first finish off these 2 people in front of me. As for what kind of divine power or magic arts they have, why should I tell you?" At this moment, Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu weren't much better off. Under everyone's attacks, Ji Xianxian had forcefully activated the divine power and magic arts contained within the golden mirror. Even though Yin Xianchu had seized the opportunity to kill one of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction and the other one had suffered heavy injuries and was no longer in danger, Ji Xianxian had also suffered a backlash because he had forcefully used the golden mirror to distort the divine will of 6 cultivators of the same level as him. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and his face turned purplish gold. He looked like he was on the verge of collapse. If not for Yin Xianchu supporting him from the side, Ji Xianxian probably wouldn't even have the strength to stand. The leader of the Overturning Seas faction finally looked towards the 2 Jinling cultivators. He said word by word, "Kill them. Grind their bones and scatter their ashes." His cold voice was filled with boundless killing intent, as if it wanted to freeze the seawater beneath his feet. Yin Xianchu shielded Ji Xianxian behind him. 2 pitch-black daggers suddenly appeared in his hands. Ji Xianxian suddenly said weakly behind him, "Don't worry about me later. Just focus on escaping. Their target is you, so they won't do anything to me. Even if the Overturning Seas faction wants to kill me, Ouyang Weijian will stop them. Otherwise, our sect will definitely not let this matter rest." Ji Xianxian understood his good friend too well. He knew that Yin Xianchu definitely wouldn't escape alone in such a hopeless situation. That was why he deliberately said these words, hoping that Yin Xianchu would have the opportunity to escape first. However, Yin Xianchu clearly didn't listen to these words. He gripped the daggers in his hands even tighter, and his eyes were filled with determination. Yin Xianchu suddenly let out a long howl towards the sky. His howl was filled with madness, and a gust of cold white mist suddenly erupted from Yin Xuanchu's body under Ji Xuanxuan's astonished gaze. At this moment, Lu Ping was also startled awake by Yin Xuanchu's long howl. He wiped away the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and a green light flickered in Lu Ping's eyes. The scene several kilometers away instantly entered his eyes. Lu Ping never expected that the injuries on his body would be so severe. Furthermore, they would erupt right when he was about to enter the battlefield. The lives of his 2 good friends were hanging by a thread, yet he couldn't help them at all. Just now, he clearly saw that Ouyang Weijian's cultivation had already reached the 5th layer of the core forging realm. Moreover, he was at the peak of the 5th layer, and could advance to the 6th layer at any time. With Lu Ping's current state, once he made a move against Ouyang Weijian at his peak, he would only be courting death. Just as Lu Ping's thoughts raced, Yin Xuanchu's howl rang out. Lu Ping immediately sensed that something was amiss. When he looked again, the true eyes of the 3 pure ones could no longer see through the white mist that had already enveloped Yin Xianchu due to the distance. He could only faintly see the shadow of a white whip swaying back and forth within the white mist. Ouyang Weijian's heart skipped a beat, as if he sensed that someone was spying on him. However, when he spread out his divine sense in all directions, he couldn't find anything. When he looked at the scene within the white mist again, he seemed to have discovered something. He exclaimed to the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang, "This person is indeed a monster. Let's join forces and eliminate him first." By then, the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang had also sensed that something was amiss. With a gloomy face, he nodded his head. The flying sword in Ouyang Weijian's hand shot out first. Next, the 3 cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang attacked together, attacking Yin Xianchu, who was enveloped by the white mist. 2 black-colored daggers suddenly shot out from within the white mist to block Ouyang Weijian's flowing wind sword. Ouyang Weijian's face sank. Earlier, Yin Xianchu clearly did not possess this level of strength. As the attacks from the 3 cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang were about to make their way into the white mist, a clump of white mist suddenly split out from within the white mist. It transformed into a long whip and lashed out. There seemed to be something hidden within the white mist. Faintly, snow-white scales could be seen on the surface of the whip. The white mist whip struck one of the Overflowing Seas gang cultivators' magic treasure, sending it flying. Then, it extinguished the blue clump of flames that the other Overflowing Seas gang cultivator fired out. However, it was too late to stop the flying sword from the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. The flying sword streaked through the white mist, and Yin Xuanchu's howl of pain rang out from within the white mist. Then, a blood-red light sprayed out from within the white mist, dyeing the white mist a faint red. Immediately after, the white mist transformed. A gigantic claw wrapped in white mist suddenly reached out and slapped the flying sword that streaked through the white mist. The flying sword let out a mournful cry, and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang suddenly paled. Ouyang Weijian saw the change in Yin Xianchu and looked at Ji Xianxian, who was behind him. A thought came to his mind and he said, "Let's capture that Ji Xianxian first." The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang had already understood. He nodded at his two subordinates, and the two cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang immediately circled around the white mist that Yin Xianchu had transformed into. The magic treasures in their hands greeted Yin Xianchu. Yin Xianchu, who was within the white mist, let out a furious howl. He turned around and charged towards Ji Xianxian, blocking all the magic treasures that were attacking Ji Xianxian. However, Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang took the opportunity to attack again. Two flying swords streaked through the white mist, and Yin Xianchu let out another howl of pain. Chapter 482. At that moment, Lu Ping could no longer care about the injuries on his body and the depletion of his true essence. He took out a jade bottle from his storage magic artifact and poured out a scarlet pill. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then opened his mouth and swallowed the pill. The moment the pill entered his mouth, a bone-deep pain swept through his entire body. Lu Ping could not help but groan in pain. However, what followed the intense pain was the rapid circulation of true essence within Lu Ping's body. The two high-grade spirit stones in his hands seemed to have been eroded by the wind. In just a moment, they were reduced to ashes. At that moment, a loud rumble rang out in the sky. Lu Ping was overjoyed. When he raised his head to look, he saw that in the sky above the battle between Yin Xianchu and the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang, a gray cloud had unknowingly condensed. However, the cloud looked very strange. It did not look like it was about to rain. Instead, it looked like a cloud of dust. In fact, as the dust gathered thicker and thicker, it wasn't lightning that accompanied the loud rumbles. Instead, it was huge boulders that crashed into the ground. Skies collapse. This was the ultimate skill that made Sage Guixianshan famous in the North Sea. Skies collapse! It's Guixianshan! The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang clearly recognized this great divine ability. He immediately roared in horror. On the other side, the expressions of the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang who were besieging Ji Xianxian changed. If Guixianshan had really arrived, then not a single one of them would be able to escape. When they thought of this, they could not help but slow down. Yin Xianchu, who was within the white mist, seized the opportunity and sent the two magic treasures attacking Ji Xianxian flying. "No, this is Sky's collapse, but it's not Guixianshan." As Ouyang Weijian spoke, he shattered 3 boulders with a slash of his sword. However, more and more meteorites streaked across the sky, leaving trails of fiery light as they smashed down on Yin Xuanchu's group. Ouyang Weijian had no choice but to utilize the 9 merry swords to nimbly dodge the meteorites. At the same time, the flowing wind sword no longer collided head-on with the falling meteorites. Instead, it nimbly deflected the meteorites above Ouyang Weijian's head. The 9 wind swords and the 9 merry swords were obviously different. The 9 wind swords was meticulous, and its attacks were like a storm, penetrating through every opening. However, the 9 merry swords was different. This swordsmanship focused more on speed, technique, and being traceless. Lu Ping had used Xianling Sek's 18 merry swords as a reference several times. With a single glance, he could tell that although Ouyang Weijian had combined the 9 wind swords into one and achieved a great swordsmanship, the 9 merry swords was clearly not at the level of a great swordsmanship. However, seeing how Ouyang Weijian handled the sky's collapse with ease, it was clear that Ouyang Weijian was only one step away from combining the 9 wind swords into one and achieving a great swordsmanship. This person was truly a rare sword cultivator genius. At this moment, Lu Ping had already donned the stone armor and dove into the water. He took out the water-repelling moon pearl and quickly and stealthily moved in the direction of Yin Xuanchu's group. Although the sky's collapse was powerful, it couldn't do anything to Ouyang Weijian. On the other hand, the other 2 cultivators from the Overflowing Seas sect were flustered by the sudden attack and had already been hit by several meteorites. One of them had his protective artifact destroyed, while the other was in the process of dodging. Yin Xianchu seized the opportunity and severely injured him, causing him to vomit blood. At this moment, the leader of the Overflowing Seas sect also noticed that the power of the great swordsmanship displayed by the ambusher was far from the earth-shattering momentum of the legendary Guishuanchans. Furthermore, when he swept his divine sense across the area, he also noticed the ambusher in the distance. It was only a 5th-layer core forging cultivator. The leader's hands formed a series of hand seals. The silver flying sword that had been smashing the meteorites above his head suddenly exploded with a silvery white sword aura. It spun and charged towards the gray clouds above his head. As the sword danced in the air, the white sword aura also spun towards the sky, shredding all the meteorites in its path into pieces. Surprisingly, this was also a great swordsmanship. At the same time, Ouyang Weijian, who was dodging on the other side, seemed to have a telepathic connection. The flowing wind sword in his hand whistled forward, closely following the leader's silver flying sword. The silver flying sword broke through the obstruction of the meteorites and finally entered the gray clouds. A series of muffled sounds rang out, and rays of silver light flashed continuously within the gray clouds. Next, the flowing wind sword flew into the clouds as well, and the gray clouds were continuously blown away. The power of the meteorites falling from the sky grew weaker and weaker. Finally, a thick silvery sword aura pierced through the air from the gray clouds. After a loud explosion, the leader of the Overflowing Seas sect, who was on the surface of the sea, turned crimson. The gray clouds in the sky were finally broken by the combined power of the 2 swordsmanship. Only a dozen or so meteorites fell rapidly towards the surface of the sea. However, they were no longer a threat. However, just as the 2 of them were about to retrieve their flying swords, a cold harumph suddenly rang out from an unknown direction. When the leader turned around to check, he saw one of his subordinates standing there motionlessly, as though he had become a fool. The leader grew anxious and he opened his mouth to shout. However, it was already too late. A large boulder whistled down to smash his subordinate's head into his chest. The cold harumph clearly did not belong to the cultivator who had unleashed Heaven's Bane earlier. The corners of the leader's eyes twitched, and he shouted, "Who is it? Who is it?" Ouyang Weijian was also bewildered. At that moment, a cultivator in his 30s suddenly flew across the sky from the direction of Universe Island. He moved past Ouyang Weijian and the Overflowing Seas sect cultivators to land beside Yin Xianchu, who was shrouded in white mist. He was none other than the one who had launched the sneak attack earlier. Ouyang Weijian asked in a serious tone, "Someone from Jinling? Guishuanchan's disciple?" Reverend Lu Xianyuan looked at Yin Xianchu beside him, then turned around and smiled. "I am Lu Xianyuan, Reverend Guishuanchan's 5th disciple." Ouyang Weijian came to a sudden realization. "Lu Xianyuan, Lu Ziyuan. So you were one of the North Sea's 18 generals back then. I haven't heard any news about you for the past decade or so I thought you had already faded into the crowd. I didn't expect you to have such accomplishments." Although Reverend Lu Xianyuan was also a 3rd-generation disciple like Ouyang Weijian and Lu Ping, he was a late bloomer and was 100 years older than them. Although his strength might not be on par with these 2 geniuses from the North Sea, his ability to maintain his composure was far above theirs. Hearing Ouyang Weijian's provocative words, Reverend Lu Xianyuan still said in a calm tone, "I wouldn't dare. Junior brother Ouyang and junior brother Lu are both outstanding talents in their respective sections. I'm just a few years older, so I can't compare to the 2 of you. However, If junior brother Ouyang wants to teach me, then I'll naturally accompany you. When Ouyang Weijian mentioned Lu Ping, Reverend Lu Xianyuan could not help but let out a cold snort. He looked at the surface of the sea and said coldly, "You have another companion. Ask him to come out as well." Lu Xianyuan smiled and did not say anything. Yin Xianchu was wrapped in a layer of white mist, so his expression could not be seen. Although Ji Xianxian tried his best not to faint, he was also at his limit, and could lose consciousness at any time. When Ouyang Weijian saw that there was no movement on the surface of the sea, he could not help but sneer. "What a cowardly fellow! Since you're not coming out, I'll kill this half-human, half-demon fellow first." With that, he pointed the flowing wind sword at Yin Xianchu, who was shrouded in the white mist. With a loud clang, a grotesquely shaped stone sword swept out and blocked the flowing wind sword. Reverend Lu Xianyuan took a step forward and stood in front of Yin Xianchu. Ouyang Weijian looked at the person in front of him and asked in a deep voice, "Are you, Zhenling, really going to protect a demon?" Reverend Lu Xianyuan stopped smiling and said seriously, "Even if he's a demon, he's still a demon of my Zhenling. There will naturally be my Zhenlings, enforcers to clean up the sect. Aren't you stretching your hand too far? Could it be that your sect's Laozu has given the order to clean up the sect on my Zhenling's behalf?" Ouyang Weijian sneered. "Everyone has the right to kill demons. There's no need for my sect's Laozu to give the order." Reverend Lu Xianyuan said sternly, "Since that's the case, please leave. I, Zhenling, can still let bygones be bygones for injuring my junior brother Ji Xianxian. If you continue to pester me, I might have to fight." Ouyang Weijian said disdainfully. "You think you're my opponent? Among the cultivators of the same rank in the North Sea, who else is worthy of being my opponent other than Lu Xianping?" The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang was already burning with rage. This time, he had brought 4 subordinates with him. He had originally thought that they could make contributions to the important figures from the palace and receive their appreciation. However, due to a series of unforeseen events, he had lost 3 of his subordinates. The remaining one was also injured, while the person he wanted to kill was still safe and sound. The silver flying sword in the leader's hand stabbed towards Lu Xianyuan as he scolded, "What's with all this nonsense? Zhenling, you're so mighty!" Just as the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang attacked, Ouyang Weijian also attacked. The 2 of them simultaneously attacked Reverend Lu Xianyuan. Yin Xianchu, who was beside Reverend Lu Xianyuan, was about to step forward to help, but the remaining cultivator from the Overflowing Seas gang immediately went forward to hold Yin Xianchu back. At that moment, Yin Xianchu was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Even though he had restored his half-demon form with the conviction that he would die, he had already been severely injured by Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. If not for his half-demon form, which allowed his body to be far stronger than ordinary cultivators, he would have died a long time ago. Under the pincer attack of Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang, Reverend Lu Xianyuan quickly fell into a disadvantageous position even though he had adopted a defensive stance from the beginning. Reverend Lu Xianyuan faced the attacks calmly. His stone sword made his body watertight. Even though he was at a disadvantage, Ouyang Weijian and Yin Xianchu could not do anything to Reverend Lu Xianyuan. The more Ouyang Weijian fought, the more apprehensive he became. Lu Xianyuan had never revealed his strength in Zhenling. He had only won the title of 18 Generals in the North Sea before he advanced to the core forging stage. After that, there had been no news of him for more than 10 years. Yet, his attacks were so steady and steady. He was able to persist under the joint attacks of Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. If he were to fight Ouyang Weijian alone, he would not be much inferior. Zhenling. Aside from Lu Xianping, Ji Xianxian, and Yin Xianchu, there's actually another cultivator of the same level who can match me. This person cannot be left alive. Chapter 483. Just as Ouyang Weijian made up his mind to kill perfected Lu Xianyuan, Another scream was heard, followed by an angry roar from the leader of the overturned seas sect. The silver flying sword dodged past perfected Lu Xianyuan and shot towards the sea in front of Yin Xianchu, shouting, "Get out here!" Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the overturned seas sect had been keeping an eye on the enemy that had been hiding since the divine will blast that had killed one of the overturned seas sect's cultivators with Sky's Bane. However, to their surprise, even though the two of them had been carefully observing the surroundings with their spiritual force while they were working together to attack perfected Lu Xianyuan, they did not find any trace of anyone. It was as if the person just now had suddenly disappeared. However, even though Ouyang Weijian and Yin Xianchu had done their utmost to guard against a sneak attack from an enemy hiding in the shadows, they did not expect that the enemy would suddenly appear in the water behind Yin Xianchu and the overflowing seas gang cultivators. The faint blue sword gleam flashed by. Without the cultivator from the overflowing seas clan noticing, it pierced through his heart-core space in one fell swoop. The cultivator died instantly. Just as the leader of the overturned seas sect shouted and stabbed the silver flying sword in his hand into the sea, a four-legged serpent with a single horn on its head suddenly emerged from the sea. Its golden horn knocked the silver flying sword away. The silver flying sword circled in the sky and turned back to attack the serpent. However, the serpent's tail swung and knocked the flying sword away again. The silver flying sword wailed as the overflowing seas sect's leader's expression finally turned solemn. Ouyang Weijian, who was battling spiritual master Lu Xianyuan, saw the strange golden jiao flaunting its prowess in the sky and his expression immediately changed. He shouted, "Be careful, it's Lu Xianping, this is his sword technique divine art!" The leader had already called back his flying sword in preparation to resist the four-legged strange dragon's sudden attack. But upon hearing Ouyang Weijian's reminder, he hastily placed the glazed bell on his head and pointed his finger at the silver flying sword. The white swirling sword chi that had previously broken immortal Lu Xuanyuan's Sky's Bane. Great magical power appeared again and collided head-on with the strange dragon. In one fell swoop, the strange dragon's scales were smashed into pieces. However, before the leader could show a look of joy, he saw an awe-inspiring sword light spurt out from the horn of the strange dragon, bypassing the silver flying sword and slashing toward the leader. The leader didn't have time to react and directly used the glazed bell to block the true essence single chi sword. After a loud bang, the brilliance of the glazed bell dimmed. The leader was also sent flying hundreds of feet away from the surface of the sea by the golden scale sword. Only then did the tremendous force transmitted by the sword dissipate. However, without waiting for the leader to respond, the broken strange flood dragon suddenly plunged into the sea. A huge wave rose out of thin air, flashing with a cold light under the sun as it rushed towards the leader dozens of feet away. Torrent of Sword Arts. Blue Waves Incantation. Originally, the Torrent of Sword techniques and Azure Wave scripture were only at the level of a minor technique. But after Lu Ping comprehended dozens of sword techniques using the Thousand Snow Piles sword scripture, and combined them with the Azure Wave scripture, the power of the Torrent of Sword techniques had already reached the level of a major technique. However, Lu Ping was always lacking that last bit of enlightenment, so he couldn't take that last step. Under the control of the leader, the silver flying sword directly pierced a big hole in the surging torrent of sword arts. However, it was useless against the huge wave. The torrent of sword arts instantly filled the hole and continued to surge towards him. The leader's expression changed, and he moved his body to dodge. However, before he could do anything, countless tentacles suddenly stretched out from the sea under his feet, suddenly wrapping around his feet. Under the control of the gentian bead, Lu Ping could exert the power of this incantation to the level of a small magical power. However, for a cultivator like the leader who had already comprehended a great magical power, the power of the incantation of water did not matter in his eyes. The true essence under his feet surged, and in an instant, the tentacles on his feet were shattered. However, naturally, Lu Ping would not place his hopes on the incantation of water. In fact, all Lu Ping needed was the moment the leader shattered the tentacles on his feet, and the torrent of sword arts had already hit the pale golden light wall formed by the glazed bell. The torrent of sword arts came up and down, and the pale golden light wall was like a small boat in a huge wave. Although it avoided the danger of being destroyed, it was also hit full of holes. While most cultivators in the core forging stage were still comprehending the big and small magical powers, and using them as a means to win or lose, Lu Ping had already begun to ponder the several types of magical powers he had comprehended as a set of combination attacks. In a battle, he would not give his opponent any time to breathe. More and more cracks appeared on the pale golden light wall, but Lu Ping's method did not stop there. After 3 consecutive sword waves, a water whip suddenly lashed out from the sea, and before the leader could recover, it struck the pale golden light wall. The already cracked light wall quickly collapsed, and the glazed bell that was suspended in midair also let out a mournful cry, and fell from the leader's head. A faint crack appeared on the body of the bell. A heaven-shaking sword sound rang out, and the golden scales sword suddenly rose from the sea. Rays of psychic sword light separated from the sword body, and began to orderly arrange around the golden scale sword. This was a great swordsmanship magical power. The leader immediately felt a chill in his heart. Even though he had also grasped a great swordsmanship magical power, his proficiency level was far from that of Lu Ping's. Not to mention creating a sword formation with a swing of his sword, even that flying silver sword light consumed a great deal of the leader's mental strength. Seeing that the sword formation had already surrounded the leader, and that if he did not break out, he would fall into the sword formation, the leader made a prompt decision, and with the silver flying sword in his hand as the lead, he rushed in the direction of Earth Island. A series of explosions rang out, and after the silver-white flying sword light was destroyed, the leader finally broke out of the heavy encirclement before the sword formation had completely closed in. The leader spat out a mouthful of blood, and let out a hoarse howl. When Ouyang Weijian, who was fighting with Reverend Lu Xianyuan, heard the howl, he took a deep look at the Jinling cultivator in front of him, who was actually able to withstand his attacks for such a long time. He then turned around and retreated towards Earth Island. Reverend Lu Xianyuan let out a long breath, and did not chase after him. When Reverend Lu Xianyuan turned around to look at Yin Xianchu, he saw that Yin Xianchu had unknowingly retracted the white mist and returned to his human form. At this moment, he was stuffing a healing pill into the mouth of the already unconscious Ji Xianxian. On the other side, a stream of seawater flowed in reverse, and gradually formed a water person that looked exactly like Lu Ping. Reverend Lu Xianyuan was stunned, and said with some hesitation, "Sunflower water true body. Junior brother was actually able to reach such a realm?" Lu Ping shook his head helplessly and said, "Immortal elder, you must be joking. How could disciple be able to cultivate a divine power like the sunflower water true body? It's just a trick to escape." However, the comprehension of the sunflower water true body can indeed be used as a reference. Reverend Lu Xianyuan laughed bitterly and said, "You've already started to comprehend the sunflower water true body. How can we, the third-generation disciples who have cultivated for hundreds of years, endure this?" Lu Ping did not comment and walked straight to Ji Xianxian. With a sweep of his divine perception, he instantly understood most of the injuries in Ji Xuanchuan's body. Excessive consumption of divine perception? Lu Ping frowned and asked, "Not only is there consumption, but there's also a backlash. Did he use the divine perception secret technique divine power?" Yin Xuanchu's entire body was already drenched in blood, and his injuries were not much weaker than Ji Xuanchuan's. Right now, he was just forcefully holding on. When Lu Ping saw the guilt on Yin Xuanchu's face, he comforted him. "There's no danger to his life, and it won't negatively affect his future cultivation. He just needs to spend 3 to 5 years to recuperate. Perhaps he might even be able to benefit from this disaster." Lu Ping's words clearly made Yin Xuanchu's expression relax, and then his body began to sway due to the large amount of blood loss. Seeing him like this, Lu Ping hurriedly stuffed a jade-like medicinal pill into his hand and said, "This is the jade body pill, and it's the best medicinal pill I have on me. Swallow and refine it as soon as possible. I'm afraid there'll be a tough battle in a while. Yin Xianchu nodded and directly swallowed the jade body pill. He sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea and began to refine the medicinal pill to recover from his injuries as soon as possible. Reverend Lu Xianyuan walked over and said, I'm afraid we can't go to Universe Island anymore. I first went to Xianxi Island from Huangli Island, and then used the teleportation formation to Dekuan Island, and then to Universe Island. Originally, I wanted to receive you guys on the island, but the teleportation formation along the way has been heavily guarded. Even Huangli Island has many unfamiliar core forging cultivators. Right now, Ouyang Weijian and that cultivator from the Overflowing Seas gang are also fleeing in the direction of Universe Island. I'm afraid that cultivators will soon find out about Junior Marshal Brother Yin's whereabouts and rush over. When that time comes, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape even if we grow wings. At this moment, Yin Xianchu suddenly opened his eyes and said, I can't let my brothers pay such a huge price for me anymore. I know that Uncle Master Xianxu should be nearby. Senior Marshal Brother Lu, take me to Uncle Master Xianxu. Yin Xianchu rarely spoke. This time, he said so much because he had already made up his mind not to escape anymore. Reverend Lu Xianyuan frowned and said, Foolish! Everyone has paid such a huge price to escort you to this step with great difficulty. If you give up so easily, would the price that everyone paid for you be worth it? If you really can't escape, you can just dig a hole at the bottom of the sea and hide there for dozens of years. At most, your cultivation will be greatly slowed down. With your 500 to 600 years of lifespan, what's there to be afraid of? Yin Xuanchu's body trembled. It was obvious that he was extremely agitated. Just as he was about to say something, he heard Lu Ping suddenly chuckle and say, I have a good idea. Wait a moment! Lu Xianyuan did not know what Lu Ping was going to do, but he saw Lu Ping suddenly pull out a corpse from the sea. Or rather, this person still had his last breath. This person was the Overflowing Oceans gang cultivator whose hardcore space was shattered by Yin Xianchu with the cooperation of Ji Xianxian. This person's heart was different from ordinary people. It grew on the right side. When Yin Xianchu pierced through this person's left chest, he realized that something was wrong. However, due to the urgency of the situation, Yin Xianchu did not have the time to pierce the right side of the heart. He could only use his quintessential essence to completely collapse the heart core space and cripple his cultivation. After that, this person kept drifting on the sea but did not drown. It could be considered a miracle. Lu Xianyuan saw that Lu Ping stuffed a precious life-fishing pill into this person's mouth. Just as he was about to say something, he saw that this person's eyelids were trembling. With the support of the life-fishing pill, it was obvious that he was about to wake up. Lu Ping saw that this person would not die for a while. Without waiting for him to wake up, his palm that was covered in blue quintessential essence had already slapped the person's head. Reverend Lu Xuanyuan's eyes narrowed. He could not help but ask, Soul-searching art? Chapter 484. The inner sea of the North Sea was different from the outer sea and the deep sea demon territory. The deepest part of the sea was only a few hundred feet deep. It was a far cry from the outer sea, which was thousands of feet deep. Furthermore, the deep sea demon territory was rumored to have seas that were thousands or even tens of thousands of feet deep. Even the demons that lived in the sea could only explore the depths of those seas. Yin Xianchu looked at the pearl hovering above Lu Ping's head and asked uncertainly, The Jade Sea Moonlight Pearl? With the help of the Jade Sea Moonlight Pearl, the speed at which Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu moved through the sea was comparable to flying through the sky. Furthermore, because the deep sea blocked divine will, unless there was a late core forging cultivator or a Dharma manifestation cultivator like Laozu, no one would be able to discover the two hidden in the deep sea. As Lu Ping flew, he smiled and said, I just happened to discover it in a cave. However, you should take this opportunity to suppress your injuries and recover the vital energy in your body. Although we have to catch them off guard this time, we can't be sure that the Overflowing Seas sex cultivator's memory will not be wrong. It's better to be safe than sorry. Just when Lu Ping discovered that one of the overflowing sea's sex cultivators was still alive, Lu Ping had an idea. The overflowing sea's sect was a chess piece that the Crystal Palace had placed in the North Sea. Although this was not a secret among the high-level cultivators of the North Sea, Yin Xianchu and the others did not know about it. However, Lu Ping had seen it with his own eyes and heard it with his own ears. Lu Ping was certain that the overflowing sea's sect controlled the teleportation array that led to the East Sea. Based on the last time Lu Ping used the overflowing sea's sect's teleportation array, the overflowing sea's sect did not guard the teleportation array that led to the East Sea very strictly. However, it was well hidden. With this core forging cultivator's cultivation, it was definitely possible that he knew the location of the teleportation array in the overflowing sea's sect. As expected, Lu Ping used the overflowing sea's sect's teleportation array to find the location of the 3 secret teleportation arrays. However, their destination was the fallen mystic realm in the East Sea. Lu Ping made a prompt decision. He asked enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan to bring the heavily injured Ji Xianxian back to Tianling Mountain, while Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu headed to the overflowing ocean sect's secret teleportation array closest to this place. In order to prevent others from discovering them, Lu Ping cast out the water-repelling moon pearl and flew towards this secret location from the bottom of the sea. Yin Xianchu regulated his breathing for a moment. When he felt that his injuries were fine, he looked at Lu Ping with a hesitant expression. Although Lu Ping had been fleeing at the bottom of the sea, he also noticed Yin Xianchu's dilemma. He couldn't help but smile and say, "Junior Marshal Brother Yin, do you have something to ask?" Yin Xianchu nodded when he saw that Lu Ping had spoken first. "Senior brother, did you already know of my identity and knew that my identity would be exposed?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and nodded. "I found out about your identity by accident. After Senior Uncle Xianin died, I sensed that Aoyu wouldn't let you off since he was so determined to kill you. The easiest way was to expose your identity as a descendant of a human and a demon, and use the tens of thousands of years of enmity between the human and demon races to kill you. Therefore, I asked Senior Sister Hu to invite all of you to Huangli Island before I left for the demon race's territorial waters. If your identity was exposed, we could join forces and escort you away." Lu Ping thought for a moment, and simply voiced out his doubts. "I just didn't expect that your identity would cause such a huge reaction from the sects of the Northern Sea. Not only was my sect pressured to kill you, it seemed that the entire Northern Sea's cultivation world was focused on you. You're only a mid-stage core forging cultivator. If you really are a descendant of a human and a demon, and have some incredible secret on you, any random Laozu could have just taken you in. Why did they send so many cultivators to be witnesses and even provoke the joint attack of Ouyang Weijian and the overflowing sea gang? This is really strange and doesn't make any sense." Yin Xianchu was silent for a while before saying, "Senior Brother Lu, do you know about the Dragon Ice Pearl?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Dragon Ice Pearl? The inheritance of the Dragon Ice clan. It's the foundation that the Dragon Ice clan relies on to become a top demon race. Yin Xianchu nodded. "That's right. I believe Senior Brother has some understanding of the Dragon Ice clan. But does Senior Brother Lu know where the Dragon Ice Pearl comes from?" Lu Ping shook his head. "I don't know about that," Yin Xianchu said. "The inheritance of the Ice Dragon race for tens of thousands of years is sealed within the Ice Dragon Pearl, but only the descendants of the Ice Dragon race are able to open the seal of each level of the Ice Dragon Pearl according to the level of their cultivation. At the same time, the amount of inheritance that can be opened within the same level of cultivation is also determined according to the level of strength." Lu Ping already knew about this from Samling. Yin Xianchu continued to speak with fervor and assurance. "However, the creation of the Dragon Ice Pearl is not easy. Not only does it require a large amount of precious spiritual materials, but more importantly, only the clansmen of the Dragon Ice clan who have reached the Dharma stage can start refining the inheritance of the Dragon Ice Pearl. Only the Dragon Ice Clan cultivators who have reached the Dharma stage can open all the seals in the Dragon Ice Pearl and know all the secrets of the Dragon Ice Clan's inheritance for tens of thousands of years. Lu Ping seemed to vaguely grasp what Yin Xianchu wanted to say, but it was still a little unclear. He asked, "Junior brother Yin, do you mean that the sects of the North Sea have come for the Dragon Ice Pearl?" Yin Xianchu nodded. "With my level of cultivation, if I have the Dragon Ice Pearl, I can only open the inheritance related to the middle and late stages of core forging. These inheritances are of no use to Dharma Laozu, but for core forging cultivators, if they obtain these inheritances, it will undoubtedly be an extremely rich foundation. The assistance to a cultivator's future achievements is absolutely limitless." Lu Ping heard the meaning in Yin Xuanchu's words and said, "Junior brother doesn't have the Dragon Ice Pearl, but the cultivators of the North Sea don't believe it. They would rather kill the wrong person than let him go." Yin Xianchu nodded and said confidently, "That should be the case. Moreover, the Dragon Ice Pearl itself is an extremely high-grade magic treasure. Even in the hands of cultivators who aren't from the Dragon Ice Clan, it can still display quite a bit of power. However, I once heard my father say that the Dragon Ice Clan has long since declined. Back then, the last of the Dragon Ice Clan, Laozu, only had 3 Dragon Ice Pearls left, and they were all left for my mother. My mother inherited one for herself, and Aou also has one. The other one was given to Aou after my mother married my father. I've inherited my father's mantle since I was young, and I haven't learned any of the Dragon Ice Clan's divine arts. My transformation into a half-demon was merely an instinctive reaction." Lu Ping nodded. Although he still had many questions in his heart, he didn't say anything. At this moment, the two of them had already arrived at a deserted island. It wasn't very big, and the island was littered with craggy rocks. There didn't seem to be any signs of human activity, but no one would have thought that the overflowing sea gang had set up a secret camp here. Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu found a hidden cave under a cliff on the deserted island. The two of them glanced at each other, and Lu Ping entered first based on the memories he'd obtained from the soul search. Yin Xianchu followed closely behind, keeping his guard up. The cave under the sea was slanted upwards. Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu cautiously walked upwards, scanning the area with their divine senses at the same time. For late blood condensation realm cultivators from the overflowing sea gang stood guard at the part of the cave that was exposed above the water. At this moment, the water at the cave's entrance suddenly splashed upwards. The cultivator guarding the cave's entrance froze, but he didn't notice anything amiss. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he felt a cold sensation at the base of his neck. He opened his mouth to cry out, but only a hoo-hoo sound came out. A stream of blood immediately spurted out from the base of his neck. Just as the cultivator was about to collapse, the other 3 cultivators from the overflowing sea gang also noticed something amiss. One of them, who seemed to be the leader of the 4, raised an object in his hand as if to warn them. But a blue light flashed in front of his eyes, and half of his arm was severed. The intense pain caused the cultivator to cry out in pain. However, before he could cry out, a muffled groan suddenly exploded in the ears of the remaining 3 cultivators. The cultivator whose arm was severed felt dizzy, and he actually forgot about the pain in his arm. However, when the blue light that severed his arm flashed again, this cultivator's consciousness instantly fell into a bottomless abyss. The other 2 cultivators were still in a daze from Lu Ping's previous divine sense attack. 2 more splashes of water appeared at the cave's entrance. 2 black daggers circled the necks of the 2 cultivators from the overflowing sea gang. The 2 cultivators immediately fell backwards, their bodies leaning against the stone wall as they slowly slid downwards. Their heads rolled on the ground. With a splash, Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu emerged from the cave. Looking at the 4 fallen cultivators, Lu Ping stretched out his hand and collected their storage pouches. Then, he carefully probed the cave with his divine sense. He discovered that there were only 8 late blood condensation cultivators guarding this secret teleportation array. The 4 cultivators who were guarding the cave entrance had already fallen at the hands of Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu. The remaining 4 were guarding a teleportation array within the cave. Seeing that it was indeed the information Lu Ping had obtained from the Soul Search, Lu Ping glanced at Yin Xianchu and finally relaxed. However, to prevent the four from destroying the teleportation array, Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu carefully snuck up to the four cultivators and killed them one by one. Lu Ping scanned the cave with his divine sense and discovered that there was no one alive. He then walked to the side of the teleportation array and inspected it. Not bad. This teleportation array indeed leads to the East Sea. According to the memories of that cultivator from the Overflowing Sea gang, the other side of the teleportation array should be in the East Sea's perished mystic realm. However, I don't know how many guards they have stationed there. After all, that cultivator from the Overflowing Sea gang hasn't returned to the East Sea for several years. Yin Xianchu said, "We've already come this far. There's no turning back." Lu Ping nodded and handed him a jade token. He smiled and said, "I've told you everything I know about the situation in the perished mystic realm. I'll have to trouble you to look after the faction I'm managing on Soundwaves Island. Take this jade token. When the time comes, the people on Soundwaves Island will know what to do." Yin Xianchu accepted the jade token and saw Lu Ping taking out another item. Yin Xuanchu's eyes narrowed. A throbbing sensation from his bloodline caused his breathing to quicken. Chapter 485. When Yin Xianchu saw the fist-sized crystal pearl in Lu Ping's hand, he became extremely excited. Yin Xianchu looked at Lu Ping, then focused all his attention on the pearl in Lu Ping's hand. He asked with a trembling voice, Could this be? Lu Ping handed the pearl to Yin Xianchu and said, "That's right, this is the Dragon Ice Pearl." Yin Xianchu accepted the pearl from Lu Ping with both hands. A white mist suddenly rose from his hands, and Yin Xuanchu's face immediately flushed with excitement. He murmured, That's right. This is the Dragon Ice Pearl. This is the Dragon Ice Pearl." Lu Ping watched as the white mist from Yin Xuanchu's hands began to seep into the Dragon Ice Pearl. It was obvious that Yin Xianchu was refining this inheritance of the Dragon Ice clan. Lu Ping couldn't help but pat Yin Xuanchu's shoulder and said, "Now is not the time to activate the inheritance." Yin Xianchu suppressed the excitement in his heart with great difficulty. The blood of both the human and demon races flowed through his veins. In the past, he had only displayed the innate talent of his human race, yet he had already achieved so much. If he could obtain the inheritance of the Ice Ho race once more, his strength would undoubtedly increase greatly. However, he also knew that there was no time to refine the inheritance in his hands now. Hearing this, he smiled awkwardly at Lu Ping and began to inspect the transportation matrix with Lu Ping, preparing to activate it. Lu Ping tossed a few storage magic tools to Yin Xianchu and said, "These 4 storage magic tools were obtained from the 4 core forging cultivators of the Overturned Seas gang that I killed outside of Universe Island. I've taken all of the spiritual herbs and high-grade spirit stones inside. Master Immortal Lu doesn't want any of the remaining items, so you can keep them all. Although the Eastern Sea is rich and populous, the expenditure of various cultivation resources is also high. There are no sects in the Eastern Sea to back you up. I'll be thankful that my Hearing Surf Manor can be self-sufficient and have a slight surplus. I'm afraid that it won't be of much help to you. When the time comes, it'll all be up to you." Yin Xianchu did not act pretentiously and put away the 4 storage Dharma artifacts. Lu Ping placed a few high-grade spirit stones and a dozen mid-grade spirit stones into the transmission array. Before Lu Ping could activate the transmission array under Yin Xuanchu's feet lit up. Lu Ping's face sank and he quickly kept the corpses of the 4 overturned ocean sect cultivators around the teleportation array. Yin Xianchu retreated behind a large boulder behind the teleportation array and was instantly engulfed by the boulder's shadow. After keeping the corpse, Lu Ping turned around and ran out of the cave where the teleportation portal was located. White light shone brightly from the teleportation array. When the light dissipated, a middle-aged cultivator in his 40s with a sinister face appeared on the teleportation array. The middle-aged cultivator looked around the teleportation array and said, Huh! Why isn't there anyone guarding it? The overturned ocean sect has been in the North Sea for too long and has slacked off to this extent. No wonder Marshal Uncle Yuan Guan has some complaints about the overturned ocean sect and the Chiu family. Just as the middle-aged cultivator finished speaking, he suddenly saw the spirit stones that Lu Ping had just embedded into the teleportation array. The middle-aged cultivator's face changed and he raised his hand to summon his defensive Dharma treasure. However, a cold killing intent had already attacked him from behind. The middle-aged cultivator was not afraid in the face of danger. He dashed forward and at the same time, 5 layers of protective chi expanded from the surface of his body. With a tearing sound, the middle-aged cultivator's protective chi was instantly torn apart. At that moment, a 9-storied crystal pagoda with 5 layers lit up had already risen above the cultivator's head. A curtain of light hung down and blocked a black dagger in front of the cultivator. When the cultivator saw that there was only one dagger, his expression immediately changed and he quickly flipped to the side. However, it was already too late. The cultivator felt a chill on his left shoulder and a half-foot-long wound appeared on his shoulder. Before the blood could seep out, it was frozen into scarlet ice by a layer of cold chi. The cultivator turned around and looked at Yin Xianchu sternly. Someone from the Liao family? I didn't expect you to be so well informed. I, Peng Xuan, had just found out about the Liao family's background in the Middle Lands, and now you want to ambush and kill me. Unfortunately, what use is there in killing me? I've already reported the Liao family's background to the palace. I've only come to inform Marshal Uncle Yuan Guang. Yin Xianchu held the 2 daggers in his hands and listened expressionlessly to the cultivator's self-speculations. The cultivator swept his divine sense, and his face immediately lit up. He sneered. You want to keep me here with an injured body? It seems that the cultivators of the Overflowing Oceans gang have finally become smart for once. They left behind core forging cultivators to guard this cave. If they die, then so be it. In the end, they still gave me a chance to live. Yin Xianchu waved the 2 daggers. One of the daggers suddenly shot out dozens of black shadows, covering the various places where the cultivator could dodge. The other dagger flashed and disappeared without a trace among the dozens of black shadows. Your Liao family has guts to dare to kill a cultivator from the Crystal Palace. Even the major sects and clans of the Middle Lands wouldn't dare to do this. Your Liao family of the North Sea can wait to be exterminated. Even your family in the Middle Lands won't be able to save you. The cultivator retreated to block Yin Xuanchu's surprise attack as he spoke fiercely. Noisy. Yin Xianchu finally said his first sentence. At the same time, the daggers hidden among the countless black shadows suddenly stabbed out from an unexpected direction. The cultivator's crystal-glazed pagoda slashed empty air. Even though 4 floors of the crystal-glazed pagoda had been lit up, the 2 daggers still managed to pierce through the protective barrier of light. However, after piercing through the barrier of light, the 2 daggers were like an arrow at the end of its flight and had no choice but to retreat. However, this still shocked the cultivator. Taking advantage of the fact that Yin Xuanchu's daggers were ineffective, he turned around and fled out of the cave. As he fled, he turned his head to look at Yin Xianchu, only to find that Yin Xianchu didn't give chase. Instead, Yin Xianchu revealed a mocking smile. Not good. The cultivator quickly realized that he had overlooked something. However, it was already too late. A golden sword beam suddenly shot out to collide with the fleeing cultivator. The crystal-glazed pagoda's protective barrier of light had just been pierced by Yin Xianchu. Thus, it did not have much defensive magic power left. Not to mention, the 5 layers of protective astral energy were no match for Lu Ping's divine swordsmanship. Before the cultivator could even cry out, Lu Ping had cleaved him into 2. Lu Ping sighed and said, This person's magic treasures are the crystal Jian and the crystal glazed pagoda. The Crystal Palace's standard magic treasure has only been upgraded. However, the crystal glazed pagoda is related to a great divine ability of the Crystal Palace. Only the elite disciples of the Crystal Palace can obtain its inheritance. However, this person's strength is so mediocre. How did he obtain the crystal glazed pagoda? Yin Xianchu shook his head and said, I've only seen the crystal-glazed pagoda once when a cultivator from the Eastern Sea visited our sect. Moreover, that cultivator from the Crystal Palace was beaten to a pulp by you. However, this person seems to think that we are from the Liao family of the Northern Sea. From his tone, it seems that he has discovered some secret of the Liao family. Lu Ping chuckled and said, This person is here to see Yuan Guang Laozu of the Crystal Palace. It seems that the Liao family is not simple. It's a pity that I couldn't hold back just now. Otherwise, I would have captured him alive and searched his soul. Lu Ping thought to himself, Not only does the Liao family have rare pills like the longevity pill and the bone-forging pill, they even have the heart-dissolving pill and the heart-forging pill that can cause a frenzy in the Northern Sea's cultivation world. They also seem to have a deep understanding of the Middle Earth. This is clearly not something an ordinary Northern Sea family can have. Lu Ping casually put away the cultivator's storage magic treasure and burned the corpse with the fire. Then, he looked up at Yin Xianchu and said, So, do you still want to use this teleportation array to go to the Eastern Sea? Yin Xianchu nodded and didn't say anything. Lu Ping smiled and said, That's good. I've told you about the Eastern Sea. Help me look after my listening wave prefecture. Once we reach the Eastern Sea, it's up to you. The white light of the teleportation array flickered again. As Yin Xianchu was engulfed by the white light, his figure also disappeared from the teleportation array. Lu Ping wasn't in a hurry to leave. Every now and then, he would use a dozen or so mid-grade spirit stones to check the teleportation array. After doing this a few times, Lu Ping's face turned a little ugly. After Lu Ping placed the spirit stones on the teleportation array again, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the teleportation array. Lu Ping's face lit up and he checked the teleportation array again. Sure enough, he found that he had lost contact with the other teleportation array at his destination. Clearly, after Yin Xianchu teleported over, he had taken control of the situation there and destroyed the teleportation array as soon as possible. Relieved, Lu Ping opened his palm and several sword chi shot out from his palm. In one fell swoop, the teleportation array on the ground was shattered into hundreds of pieces. Then, he walked out of the cave. Just as Lu Ping walked to the entrance of the seawater cave, Lu Ping was shocked. He pulled Dabeo out of the golden house and pressed his head down into the ground without saying anything. A soft sound of water came from the entrance of the seawater cave. Two mysterious core forging cultivators appeared at the entrance of the cave almost soundlessly. Seeing that there weren't any cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang guarding the surroundings, the two of them immediately became vigilant. They used their divine senses to scan the cave. Although their expressions changed, they didn't find anything. The two of them hesitated for a moment. Then, one of them reached out and pointed at the water surface of the cave. Then, the water surface rippled and two more people walked in. One of them looked burly and mighty. He seemed to be the leader of the four. He asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" The cultivator who pointed at the water surface replied in a low voice, "Something doesn't seem right. It seems like someone has already been here. The cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang are nowhere to be seen, and the teleportation array has been destroyed. Could it be that the Overflowing Seas gang has discovered our movements and abandoned this teleportation array?" The leading cultivator shook his head and said, "It's not impossible. It's just that this time, not only did Ping Xuan find some information about the Liao family in the Central Plains, he also came to the North Sea with an item that our Liao family must obtain. No matter what, we must find him alive or dead. Let's go, we'll go to the next teleportation array of the Overflowing Seas gang." After the four of them left, the narrow ground of the cave suddenly exploded into pieces of stone. Lu Ping grabbed Dabeo, who had exhausted all of his transcendence energy, and jumped out from under the stone floor. He spat out a mouthful of blood and said in a low voice, "Liao Hu, it's actually him." Chapter 486. Dabeo could use the earth escape technique, but it would be difficult for him to use the stone escape technique. Fortunately, DeBeo was at the 8th layer of the blood condensation realm and was about to advance to the peak of the blood condensation realm. Even though he was lazy, he still managed to help Lu Ping survive this ordeal. The Yuan Burst pill was the scarlet pill that Lu Ping consumed after he was injured by enlightened Master Xian Shu. It was a pill that could stimulate a cultivator's potential. It could quickly restore the cultivator's true yuan. However, the price was that the poison contained in the pill would spread throughout the cultivator's body, causing the cultivator's body to be completely isolated from the outside world's spiritual qi for a year. This also meant that for the next year, the cultivator could only cultivate by consuming pills. As for spiritual qi, spirit veins, spirit stones, and other things related to cultivation, they could not be used. After a year, even if the pill lost its effect of sealing off the spiritual qi, the remaining poison would still affect the cultivator's cultivation. The cultivator would only be able to cultivate normally after 3 to 5 years, when the poison in the body was completely eliminated. This was, in fact, a poison pellet that Lu Ping had concocted using the dark prison poison fire in case of emergency. Fortunately, the first type of protective energy that Lu Ping had refined was the myriad poison meteorite shield, which was also known as the mother of all poisons. This type of protective energy was extremely effective against any kind of poison. Lu Ping was confident that he could break through the sealing effect of this pill within half a year and fully recover within a year. However, this was only under ideal circumstances. In reality, Lu Ping was already severely injured before he consumed the Yuan Burst pill. After that, he fought a series of battles and flew continuously for a long distance, which further worsened his injuries. In the end, he was trapped by DeBeo's half-baked escape technique and had to conceal his aura to avoid being discovered by the Liao family. In the end, Lu Ping could no longer suppress the injuries in his body. "I'm afraid I won't be able to recover for at least 2 to 3 years. Lu Ping threw DeBeo into the House of Gold. Then, he found a healing pill that was refined using the spirit water pill refining technique from his storage ring. He threw it into his mouth and refined it, temporarily suppressing the injuries in his body. Although the effects of the healing medicinal pellets concocted using the spirit water alchemy technique were much better than ordinary healing medicinal pellets, in addition to the extremely high difficulty of concocting them, the spirit water alchemy technique could only concoct one medicinal pellet at a time. In other words, even if one could successfully concoct a cauldron of spirit herbs using the spirit water alchemy technique, there would only be one medicinal pellet. Therefore, even someone as wealthy as Lu Ping had only concocted 6 or 7 of these medicinal pellets to protect himself. He didn't expect that after a series of battles, other than the ones he used, and the ones used by Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu, Lu Ping would only have one left. After cautiously exiting the water cave, Lu Ping's divine sense had been vigilantly paying attention to the movements in the surroundings. He was afraid that the Liao clan would set up an ambush nearby. With Lu Ping's current state, he no longer had the ability to kill cultivators of the same level as him like weeds. Even Lu Ping himself could become a fish on the chopping block at any time. However, what made Lu Ping rejoice was that his cautiousness was ultimately useless. The cultivators of the Liao clan seemed to really care about the cultivator from the eastern sea called Pengxiuan, and didn't leave an ambush nearby. Lu Ping's heart stirred. He remembered that when Yin Xianchu took the lead to attack the cultivator from the Crystal Palace who came through the teleportation array, that person said his name was Pengxiuan. He also thought that Lu Ping and the others were from the Liao clan. In other words, the thing that the Liao clan wanted was now in Lu Ping's possession? Lu Ping placed the waterproof moon pearl on top of his head and dived into the sea, heading in the direction of Earth Island. There was something strange about this matter. Lu Ping needed to return to Jinling as soon as possible. Although many of his companions, including himself, would be severely punished by the sect because of Yin Xuanchu's matter, Lu Ping didn't care. This was because Spiritual Master Lu Xianyuan had received a hint from Spiritual Master Gui Xianshan, who had informed the sect in advance, and Spiritual Master Xianshu had intentionally or unintentionally held back. Lu Ping knew that no matter what the sect's considerations were, they were not willing to put Yin Xianchu to death. Thus, those who participated in the escort of Yin Xianchu this time were all personal disciples of the third-generation disciples with the support of their teachers. In addition, the law did not punish too many people. Lu Ping believed that the sex punishment would be nothing more than a light punishment. At the very least, they would make everyone suffer a great loss in name. Lu Ping still felt a little regretful in his heart. This was because after Lu Ping had searched the soul of the middle-stage core forging realm cultivator from the Overflowing Seas sect, he had discovered a few secret treasure vaults of the Overflowing Seas sect in the Northern Sea. These vaults contained some of the cultivation resources that the Overflowing Seas sect had obtained in the Northern Sea for several hundred years. Originally, Lu Ping wanted to take advantage of the situation and make a profit. However, it was a pity that the injuries on Lu Ping's body had relapsed. De Baio, who had always been the vanguard of Lu Ping's robbing and searching for other people's treasures, had been severely injured due to the exhaustion of his stone escape technique. Helpless, Lu Ping could only return to Earth Island first. Fortunately, there were no more twists and turns along the way. However, when Lu Ping returned to Earth Island's Snow Mist Palace, what he saw was not the scene of Tian Shui Laozu pointing at his nose and scolding him as he imagined. Instead, there was an old man sitting at the head of the palace. However, the aura he emitted was extremely vigorous and heavy. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment. He saw the expressionless Taoist Xian Shu, the gloomy Yuan Zhan, the bitter smile on Taoist Lu Xuanyuan's face, and Chen Lian, Zhong Jian, Ma Yu and the others, who had their heads lowered and did not dare to speak. Even the heavily injured Ji Xianxian was barely able to stand. He appeared to be swaying, as if he could collapse at any time. Seeing that Lu Ping walked into Snow Mist Palace unscathed, a strange look appeared in Taoist Xianshu's eyes. Yuan Zhan's expression changed, but he immediately calmed down. On the other side, Ji Xianxian and the others all revealed looks of joy. The previously tense atmosphere immediately relaxed. Even Taoist Lu Xianyuan, who appeared to be unfazed, heaved a sigh of relief. However, Lu Ping's mind was racing. Lu Ping had never seen the old man sitting at the head of the palace before. Judging from the situation where Taoist Xian Shu could only stand in front of him, this old man was obviously a Dharma adept of his sect, Laozu. Up until now, the only Dharma adept that Lu Ping had not seen before was Tiankong Laozu, who had always been recuperating and only revealed his mid-Dharma adept cultivation at the last moment, causing Xian Ling sect to return in defeat. At this thought, Lu Ping hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciple Lu Xianping pays his respects to Uncle Master Tiankong." The old man was Zhiling's fourth mid-Dharma adept, Tiankong Laozu. Laozu looked at Lu Ping and said, "You've sent him away?" Lu Ping was stunned, but he kept his mouth shut and did not answer. He did not want to deny it, but he did not want to lie in front of the elders of the sect either, so he could only wait in silence. Luckily, Patriarch Heavenly Peace didn't linger on this matter and just said directly, "You guys sure have guts to publicly defy the sect's orders and even fight with the sect's law enforcement cultivators. You guys are truly lawless. Do you still have any respect for the sect?" Lu Ping and the others stood in silence. Lu Ping carefully glanced at Tiankong Laozu, but he could not see Tiankong Laozu's expression clearly. He could only vaguely feel that Tiankong Laozu was staring at him. "Shilingling, Zhongjian, Ma Yu, the three of you will make a trip to Frost Island. Ask the Mystic Flame to seal your cultivation. I'll give you 5 years. You have to obediently go to the mines and dig for spirit stones like normal blood condensation and blood refining disciples." This meant that the sect's punishment was coming. Shilingling and Ma Yu's expressions turned bitter when they heard this, but Zhong Jian's expression was even more bitter. The two female practitioners' expressions were bitter because digging for spirit stones was already an extremely difficult task for them since their inner yuan had been sealed. Moreover, Frost Island was extremely cold. Without inner yuan to ward off the cold, how could the two delicate girls endure it? As for Zhong Jian, he was the only male cultivator among the three. With these two girls around, he definitely wouldn't just be doing his part of the hard work. Chen Lian, Du Feng, Xian Tao, the three of you were previously punished by martial nephew Xian Shu to be woodcutters at Heaven's Spirit Mountain. 3 years is too short, so it'll be changed to 5 years. Every day, 3 loads of firewood will be changed to 5 loads. Seal your inner yuan and reflect on your actions. After Tiankong Laozu finished talking about the 6 of them, he turned to look at Ji Xian, who was on the verge of collapsing, and said, "There's also Zhang Xuanqing. He actually removed the Heaven Spirit Mountain's teleportation formation's positioning compass. How thoughtful of him. Since he's working at True Spirit's side courtyard, let him be a sweeping servant in the side courtyard. 5 years later, if the side courtyard is cleaned up by him, then he'll go and be the immortal elder of the side courtyard. If he can't clean it up, then we'll talk about it when it's time to clean it up." Although these people's punishments weren't light, they weren't too heavy either. It was just that the 7 of them had their cultivation sealed, so it would be much more difficult for them to do things. Furthermore, these 5 years would more or less affect their cultivation. At this moment, everyone in the palace turned their gazes towards Ji Xian, Lu Ping, and Lu Xianyuan. Although enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan was suspected of leaking information, he didn't participate in escorting Yin Xianchu. Originally, he was supposed to go to Huanyu Island to receive the others, but he ended up fighting with Ouyang Weijian on the sea outside the island. Tiankong Laozu pondered for a moment and said, "Lu Xianyuan and Ji Xian, the 2 of you have caused too much of a commotion this time. Go and find Martial Nephew Chao." As soon as Tiankong Laozu finished speaking, not only Lu Ping, but even perfected Master Xianshu was in disbelief. This punishment wasn't too light, but it was unexpectedly severe. There was only one perfected Master Chao in Jinling, and Lu Ping knew him back then. He was the martial Uncle Chao that he met in the 7-star grotto heaven back then. Later on, he even taught Lu Ping the soul-searching technique. After that, Lu Ping was specially allowed by the sect to participate in some of the matters of the sect's upper echelons by Laozu. Only then did he have some understanding of this martial Uncle Chao. To put it bluntly, this martial Uncle Chao was a knife that Jinling hid in the dark. He controlled a hidden force in Jinling and helped Jinling deal with some things that couldn't be seen in the light. And this hidden force that he controlled had a name that Lu Ping was extremely familiar with. It was the Condemned Cultivator. Ji Xian was still a little confused, but perfected Master Lu Xianyuan seemed to have some understanding of perfected Master Chao. He was stunned for a moment before he respectfully responded. "As for you..." Lu Ping couldn't help but raise his head again. Everyone's gazes were on him. Lu Ping could even distinguish a trace of schadenfreude from among them. It belonged to the serious-looking Yuan Zhan. "Make a trip to the Pill Pavilion. The earth fire there has been very unstable recently. Go to the earth fire's mouth to suppress it for 5 years to prevent the earth fire from wreaking havoc and affecting the sect's supply of pills." Chapter 487. The earth fire vein of Dan Pavilion was the result of several generations of Jinling's senior cultivators' cultivation and strengthening. For thousands of years, the fire vein of Dan Pavilion had already accumulated to an extremely saturated state. However, all of this had become somewhat out of control after Jinling had his own magic treasure-level pill furnace. In the past, Tianjiang and Tianlu Laozu worked together to upgrade the Na Chuan Cauldron to a magic treasure. However, whether it was Dan Pavilion or Refining Hall, the fire veins managed by the 2 were not enough to upgrade the Na Chuan Cauldron to a magic treasure. Moreover, because one of the 2 fire veins was explosive and the other was relatively mild, they were incompatible and could not be fused to refine the Na Chuan Cauldron. In desperation, the 2 Laozu had to use the 2 uncultivated fire veins that Senior Jinling Laozu had previously discovered in the North Sea. Through a secret technique, the 2 fire veins were activated in advance and merged with the fire vein of Dan Pavilion to upgrade the Na Chuan Cauldron. As a result, because the 2 immature fire veins were hastily activated and merged with the fire vein of the Pill Pavilion, the original fire vein of the pill pavilion lost control and became violent. Because of the instability of the fire vein, the various alchemy rooms in the pill pavilion suffered a lot of damage because of the difficulty in controlling the fire. Of course, all of this was insignificant compared to the magic treasure level pill furnace that Jinling had obtained. However, because of the uncertain strength of the fire vein in ordinary alchemy rooms, some low-level alchemists suffered unspeakably. It would take at least 5 years to control and cultivate the fire vein again. In desperation, Tianlu Laozu organized the alchemists with Jinling's core forging stage cultivation base to take turns to suppress and control the strength of the fire vein, temporarily stabilizing the fire vein of Dan Pavilion. At the same time, Taoist Xianqin and the cultivators of his sect who were proficient in array formations were able to regain control of the strong fire vein as soon as possible. However, because the strength of these two immature fire veins was uncertain, Taoist Xianqin needed to spend more time and energy to control the strength of the fire vein at a stable level. When Lu Ping once again saw Taoist Master Xian Dian, who was in charge of the daily affairs of the Pill Pavilion, Lu Ping looked at Taoist Master Xian Dian's strange gaze and was somewhat at a loss as to what to do. Lu Ping finally followed Reverend Xian Dian to the vicinity of the earth fire vent. Reverend Xian Dian finally opened his mouth and asked, "I heard that you fought with Senior Marshal Brother Xian Shu?" Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he said, "How could disciple be Xian Shu Shu's opponent? I only asked Xian Shu Shu to teach me a little." Taoist Xian Dian nodded and solemnly said, "I heard that you killed a core forging late-stage demon cultivator. Originally, many people in the sect didn't believe it, but I'm afraid they have no choice but to believe it now." Lu Ping blushed with shame and quickly said, "How could disciple be Xian Shu Shu's opponent? It was just that Xian Shu Shu gave me 2 pointers, that's all. If it wasn't for Xian Shu Shu holding back, disciple would have already been beaten to a pulp." Taoist Xian Dian obviously wouldn't listen to Lu Ping's modest words. He walked to a blazing hot underground entrance and said, "This is the earth fire vent, which is also the main vein of the Pill Pavilion's fire vein. In the next 5 years, your task is to completely suppress the raging earth fire at the earth fire vent, and steadily transport it to the various alchemy rooms." This was the main hub of the Pill Pavilion's fire vein. Lu Ping walked to the underground entrance and saw a raging stream of earth fire, which was being controlled by 2 core forging stage cultivators with the help of an old formation, divided into 36 fire veins of different sizes. Among them, the 3 fire veins with the strongest firepower almost accounted for a quarter of the entire fire vein. These 3 fire veins were originally going to be transported to the only 3 A-grade alchemy rooms in the Pill Pavilion. This was because before Jinling obtained the Na Chuan Cauldron, Jinling only had 3 top-grade alchemy furnaces. But now, one of the Lin Chuan cauldrons was in the hands of Lu Ping. Therefore, this alchemy room was left idle. Later, several alchemy Grand Masters of Jinling would often bring their own high-grade alchemy furnaces to this alchemy room. They would try to use the higher-grade earth fire to refine some high-grade dawn. Another quarter of the fire vein was divided into 6 parts and transported to 6 B-grade alchemy rooms. Originally, 6 high-grade alchemy furnaces were placed in these rooms. However, these 6 alchemy furnaces were each controlled by the 5 alchemy grandmasters of the Pill Pavilion. The remaining one was often used by some core forging stage alchemy masters to hone their alchemy skills. It was said that Tao Xianfang, the disciple of Taoist Xian Jing, was about to become the 6th alchemy grandmaster of the Pill Pavilion. Therefore, Tianlu Laozu specially allowed him to temporarily control the remaining high-grade alchemy furnace to hone his alchemy skills. The remaining half of the fire vein was transported to 9 C-grade alchemy rooms and 18 D-grade alchemy rooms. Seeing Lu Ping come down, the 2 core forging stage cultivators who were suppressing the fire vein relaxed. Then, with some doubt, they asked, "How come it's only you?" Lu Ping stared blankly for a moment, then said, "Yes, it's only me." One of the cultivators who was talking with Lu Ping had slightly neglected his control of the fire vein. When Lu Ping saw that the fire vein that was being transported to the B-grade alchemy room suddenly swelled, the cultivator was startled and quickly suppressed it. Then, he heard a roar from a distant alchemy room. Then, Taoist Xian Yan's face darkened. Seeing Lu Ping here, Taoist Xian Yan's complexion changed. Then, he looked at the two cultivators who were suppressing the fire vein apologetically, coldly snorted, then turned around and left. The cultivator who spoke before looked at Lu Ping with embarrassment and said, "Senior brother Xian Yan has recently been pondering over a late core forging stage pill. This time, I'm afraid all his efforts have been wasted." Lu Ping looked at Taoist Xian Yan next to him, then said to the cultivator, "This is not your fault. As an alchemy grandmaster, even if there was a large fluctuation in the fire vein, it shouldn't have affected him." Reverend Xian Yan, who was standing to the side, opened his mouth to say something but smiled bitterly instead of saying anything. In truth, as an alchemy grandmaster, he was most adept at controlling fire. Reverend Xian Yan's failure to control the fire well had resulted in the pill being wasted, which was a dishonorable thing to do. Originally, when Taoist Xian Yan came to the earth fire vent, he wanted to vent his anger. After all, a late core forging stage pill was extremely precious. But after seeing Lu Ping, he forcibly suppressed his anger in his heart. The two alchemists who were suppressing the fire vein might not understand, but Taoist Xian Yan couldn't let Lu Ping see a joke. Not to mention that Lu Ping was his martial nephew, a martial nephew that he didn't like very much. However, this talented martial nephew was also an alchemy grandmaster, and even more brilliant than him. Under the surprised gazes of the two core forging round cultivators, Lu Ping really took over their positions. He sat cross-legged on the fire-splitting array disc in the center of the earth fire vent and began to control and manipulate the fire vein. His skillful fire-controlling skills left the two alchemists in awe. Suppressing the earth fire vein was an extremely boring task, not to mention that Lu Ping had to suppress it for a full 5 years. After suppressing the extremely unstable earth fire, Lu Ping also had to constantly sort out and divide the fire vein. 5 years of doing the same thing over and over again was undoubtedly an extremely boring task. For Lu Ping, with his control of fire and his cultivation that far exceeded the same level cultivators, suppressing the earth fire was not a difficult task. However, Lu Ping, as a cultivator who cultivated water attribute secret arts, was extremely uncomfortable in this place that was surrounded by flames. Lu Ping could clearly feel that his cultivation speed had dropped too much here. Fortunately, Lu Ping couldn't cultivate now. He first had to recuperate from his injuries, and then slowly expel the toxins that permeated his body because of the explosive yuan pill. Otherwise, even with the support of the pill, his cultivation would become twice the effort with half the result. To Lu Ping's surprise, after only 3 months, Lu Ping had broken through the state where the outside world's spiritual energy was isolated from Lu Ping's body because of the explosive yuan pill's toxins. Lu Ping discovered that when he was circulating his cultivation method to expel the toxins, the myriad meteoric poison energy shield was also slowly absorbing the toxins in his body. Lu Ping suddenly realized that even if he didn't purposely expel the toxins, under the absorption of the myriad meteoric poison energy shield, Lu Ping's body would gradually return to its original state. After a year, Lu Ping finally completely expelled the toxins in his body. The internal injuries from the fierce battle with Taoist Xian Shu were also completely healed. However, what made Lu Ping feel regretful was that the earth fire vent was really not an ideal place for Lu Ping to cultivate. Fortunately, Lu Ping immediately discovered another benefit of cultivating here, which was that he could continuously refine the true essence in his body while suppressing the earth fire, causing Lu Ping's true essence to become purer and thicker. Originally, Lu Ping walked the path of pure true essence. He didn't even hesitate to slow down the speed of his cultivation. However, after going through the refinement of the earth fire vent, Lu Ping discovered that his true essence could become even purer. Under the gaze of divine will, drops of condensed and concentrated true essence were absorbed by the golden core in the core space along with the circulation of the blood vessels. The 5 four-legged strange dragons on the surface of the golden core suddenly became more active. After they played on the surface of the golden core for a while, the 5 strange dragons looked up to the sky and made a long roar. A faint pressure was emitted from the underground fire vent until it expanded to a radius of nearly 10 miles before it slowly dissipated. This was the limit that Lu Ping's divine will could cover. In the pill room at the back of the mountain of the pill pavilion, Tianlu Laozu, who was refining a furnace of Dharma pills, trembled and almost ruined the furnace of pills in the Nachuan cauldron. Tianlu Laozu suddenly opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "Bloodline pressure? This isn't something that can only be found in top-grade demon beasts and true avatars. Could it be that a cultivator on Tianling Mountain is controlling a top-grade demon beast, or did a bored ancestral patriarch reveal his avatar?" After thinking for a while, Tianlu Laozu shook his head seriously and said, "No, the few Laozu on Tianling Mountain don't have this kind of bloodline pressure. Then someone must have caught a top-level demon as a pet?" A top-level demon is a big problem. Could it be Lu Xuanping's Luan? Although that Luan is not a top-level demon, the Fire Luan, it is a Luan with dual attributes of wind and fire. It can be seen that it also has the blood of the Fire Luan. The Fire Luan is one of the top 3 races of the East Sea Demon clan. I hope it won't bring trouble to the sect. At this time, Lu Ping was at the underground fire vent. He took out the belongings of the Crystal Palace cultivator, Peng Xuan, who was killed at the secret transmission array of the Covered Seas gang. At that time, he heard the Liao family cultivator say that Peng Xuan had an important item on him. Chapter 488. Lu Ping didn't expect that immortal Peng Xuan of the Crystal Palace was actually an alchemy master. No wonder immortal Peng Xuan was so easily ambushed and killed by Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu in the transmission array. How rich was the collection of an alchemy master! What's more, this alchemy master was from the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He took hundreds of thousand-year-old spiritual herbs and 20 to 33,000-year-old spiritual herbs from the storage device and put them into his own storage ring. Then, there were nearly 20 jade bottles filled with various elixirs. Lu Ping opened them one by one. There were at least 5 or 6 elixirs that Lu Ping had never heard of. The others that Lu Ping knew were elixirs that were suitable for cultivators in the middle stage of the core forging realm. Lu Ping took advantage of them. After a cultivator advanced to the core forging realm, they could only take 3 bottles of each type of elixir because of their body's resistance to the elixirs. Then, they would have to change to other elixirs for cultivation. Therefore, being able to obtain more elixirs of the same level was greatly beneficial for Lu Ping to continue to use elixirs to assist in his cultivation. In addition to these, what Lu Ping valued were the more than 10 kinds of elixir recipe jade slips in Peng Xuan's storage device. Although Peng Xuan's storage device did not contain his inheritance, there were actually 4 or 5 elixir recipes recorded in these elixir recipe jade slips that Lu Ping had yet to master. This could be regarded as an accumulation and foundation for both Lu Ping and Jinling. What's more, these elixir recipes were obviously from a sect like the Crystal Palace, so the quality of the elixir itself was naturally guaranteed. Of course, what delighted Lu Ping the most was that Peng Xuan's alchemy furnace was also carried with him, and it was an upper-grade alchemy furnace. This made Lu Ping sigh at the wealth of the Crystal Palace. Although the Jinling Mountain's alchemy grandmasters each controlled a high-grade pill furnace, they were not allowed to bring it out of Tianling Mountain. If the grandmaster went out, the pill furnace would be placed in the pill pavilion's second-grade alchemy room. They were afraid that if the grandmaster died outside, the pill furnace would fall into someone else's hands. However, the Crystal Palace obviously didn't have such scruples. Apart from being rich and overbearing, the other reason was that they were sure that the practitioners they sent would never dare to attack the practitioners of the Crystal Palace. Even the upper-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hands was no exception. However, Lu Ping had a better top-grade alchemy furnace, and it was obtained by Lu Ping himself. Therefore, the sect's rule couldn't be restricted to Lu Ping. However, a year ago, Tao Xianfang, Sage Xianjing's disciple, finally succeeded in refining pills for the core forging stage and became the 6th alchemy grandmaster of Jinling. Therefore, the last upper-grade alchemy furnace in Jinling was also under his control. However, as the number of core forging stage cultivators in Jinling increased over the years, the only 6 alchemy grandmasters couldn't guarantee the supply of pills for all the cultivators. This caused the other 5 upper-grade alchemy furnaces to be in use, except for the one Lu Ping was in charge of. As a result, only Lu Ping's upper-grade alchemy furnace was left in the 2nd-grade alchemy room for a long time. It became the only place for many alchemy masters in Jinling to practice their alchemy skills in order to advance to alchemy grandmaster. This made Tianlu Laozi quite annoyed. If this continued, Jinling's cultivation of alchemy masters would undoubtedly stagnate. These things boiled down to one reason: Jinling's foundation was insufficient. It wasn't that Tianlu Laozi didn't think of refining 1 or 2 upper-grade alchemy furnaces to alleviate the current situation. However, even if it was an upper-grade alchemy furnace, for Jinling, it wasn't something that could be easily refined. Even if Jinling prepared the spiritual materials for the alchemy furnace, the refining pavilion would still need to spend several years or even longer to carefully polish it before it could be successfully refined. The appearance of this upper-grade alchemy furnace on Ping Xuan's body could temporarily alleviate the conflict between alchemy and cultivation of alchemy masters in Jinling. After packing up all the other items, there were only 2 jade slips left in Lu Ping's hands. These 2 things on Ping Xuan's body made Lu Ping very happy. However, Lu Ping couldn't determine which important item Ping Xuan was referring to. Lu Ping first stuck one of the jade slips on his forehead. This way, he could use his divine sense to examine the contents of the jade slips more carefully. The numerous and complicated restrictions, the profound and abstruse runes, a familiar feeling immediately made Lu Ping pleasantly surprised. The only difference was that Lu Ping no longer had a splitting headache like when he first saw these runes because of the lack of divine sense. In the end, he couldn't peek at the full picture of what was recorded in the jade slips. This jade slips recorded a treasured restriction. Moreover, it was the most precious of all treasured restrictions in the cultivation world, the treasured alchemy furnace restriction. How many treasured alchemy furnace restrictions were there in the entire North Sea? Just by looking at the only 2 magic treasure-level alchemy furnaces in the entire North Sea, as well as the dozens of top-grade alchemy furnaces controlled by the top 10 sects in the North Sea, one could see the importance of the treasured alchemy furnace restriction. Lu Ping looked at the jade slips in his hand in surprise. His expression kept changing. In the end, he still kept the jade slips. Although the quality of the Na Chuan cauldron was far better than ordinary alchemy furnaces, it was still in the melting and breaking stage of the furnace and the treasured restriction. In a short period of time, it couldn't condense the 2nd treasured restriction. However, the Xianling sect's boiling sea cauldron had been upgraded to a magic treasure for many years. It had already accumulated enough foundation. Perhaps it had the conditions to smelt the 2nd treasured restriction. Thinking of this, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Even though the Crystal Palace was rich and overbearing, there was no reason for a core forging realm cultivator to carry this jade slips, which clearly showed the symbol of the Crystal Palace, around him. Then, there was only one explanation. Ping Xuan was able to carry the treasured restriction on him because the Crystal Palace gave it to him. Thinking of the alliance between Ouyang Weijian and the overflowing sea sect outside Huanyu Island, Lu Ping was shocked. Could this treasured restriction be given to Xianling sect? Lu Ping immediately thought of the Xianling sect's boiling sea cauldron, which had been upgraded to a magic treasure for hundreds of years. It already had a deeper foundation. After the Battle of Tianling Mountain, because of Tiankang Laozu's appearance, the Crystal Palace had secretly formed an alliance with Xianling sect in the North Sea. This was already an open secret in the North Sea. Then, in order to support Xianling sect in fighting against the increasingly powerful Jinling, it was very easy for the Crystal Palace to use some means to strengthen Xianling sect's foundation. Could it be that the Liao clan was after this treasured restriction? Considering the Liao clan's alchemy skills were famous in the North Sea's cultivation world, it was understandable. However, from the few words Lu Ping heard during the ambush to kill Ping Xuan, it did not seem to be the case. Lu Ping thought for a while, then placed the second jade slip on his forehead and carefully read its contents with his divine sense. After a long time, Lu Ping opened his eyes, and a strange look flashed across them. This jade slip recorded an incomplete map. There was no specific location marked on the map, but it seemed to be in the fallen secret land. The only clue on the map was the dozens of islands in the center of the map, marked with labels such as Myriad Poison Island, 100 Miasma Reef, Black Fog Swamp, Eroding Bone Island, and so on. It looked like an archipelago area covered in poison. This map was of some use to alchemists. After all, the more dangerous and strange a place was, the more likely it was to grow some exotic flowers and plants. It was a necessary item to refine some top-grade medicinal pills. This was quite attractive to alchemists. Moreover, due to the accumulation of time in these places, there might be some heaven and earth strange objects such as the Myriad Poison Meteorite Energy Shield, the 100-Flower Evil Chi, and so on. Not to mention, Lu Ping had the Myriad Poison Serum in hand, and his body had condensed the Myriad Poison Meteorite Energy Shield, so he was not afraid of this kind of miasma. As soon as he thought of heaven and earth strange objects, Lu Ping's mind flashed, as if he had grasped something. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping vaguely said to himself, "Archipelago covered in poison. Myriad Poison Serum. Myriad Wonder Jade Dew. Could it be that they came for the Myriad Wonder Jade Dew, or the Spirit Forging Pill? Could it be that this map was what the Liao clan wanted?" The Liao clan was the Pill Cauldron clan, and from the words leaked by Ping Xuan and Liao Hu, it could be seen that the Liao clan was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It seemed to be a branch of a clan in the Central Plains, and the Liao clan seemed to have a channel of communication between the North Sea and the Central Plains. For the Liao clan to move a branch from the holy land of the cultivation world to the barren North Sea, they must have some ulterior motive. Could it be for this map, the Myriad Wonder Jade Dew, or the pill recipe for the Spirit Forging Pill? If it was just for these things, there was no need for the Liao clan to operate in the North Sea for over 1,000 years. What exactly was the Liao clan plotting? Thinking about how the Liao clan's patriarch, Liao Ruingjia, had deliberately taken the initiative to befriend Lu Ping at the North Sea Palace's alchemist assembly, Lu Ping shook his head and decided not to think about this problem for the time being. The Liao clan had been operating in the North Sea for over 1,000 years. How could their objective be so easily discovered? After some time, Yao Yong, who had recovered from his injuries, ran to the earth-fire vent of the Pill Pavilion to see Lu Ping. As soon as he saw Lu Ping, Yao Yong looked as if he had seen a ghost. He winked and pretended to be deep in thought as he asked in a low voice, "I heard that you actually fought with Martial Uncle Xian Shu outside the vast Universe Island?" When Lu Ping entered the earth-fire vent, Taoist Master Xian Dian had asked him this question for no apparent reason. He didn't expect that after 2 or 3 years, Yao Yong would still ask him the same question. Lu Ping said in a bad mood, "At that time, I had no other choice. If I didn't stop Martial Uncle, what would we do if Junior Martial Brother Ian was captured? Do you really want to clean up the sect?" Yao Yong hurriedly waved his hand and said, "I'm not talking about that. Martial Uncle Xian Shu is a 9th-layer core forging expert. Although he is only slightly weaker than the 3 Trues 4 spirits in our sect, he is still the most promising cultivator in our sect to condense a 7th-layer golden core and achieve the Avatar Laozu. Among the late-stage core forging cultivators, he is an existence whose name shakes the North Sea. How high is your cultivation? You actually fought with Martial Uncle Xian Shu and even knocked out Xianling Sec's Su Wei Hong, who was watching from the side." Lu Ping furrowed his brows and said, "Did these things spread throughout the North Sea? There shouldn't be so many people who know that I fought with Martial Uncle Xian Shu." Chapter 489. Lu Ping frowned and said, "Has this matter spread throughout the North Sea? There shouldn't be so many people who know about my fight with Martial Uncle Xian Shu." Yao Yong nodded and said, "Martial Uncle Xian Shu said it himself." Noticing Lu Ping's confusion, Yao Yong continued, "Junior Martial Uncle Xian Shu said that you've withstood his mystic heavenly lightning attracting art. This is the Yiwood divine lightning technique, one of the most powerful techniques in our sect. It's also the most difficult technique to cultivate. My teacher said that if Junior Martial Uncle Xian Shu used his full strength, he would have no choice but to dodge. There's no reason for him to take it head on." Lu Ping said snappily, "You also said that it was under Martial Uncle Xian Shu's full strength. Do you think Martial Uncle Xian Shu would use his mysterious heaven lightning drawing technique against me?" Yao Yong shook his head in a daze and said, "That's naturally impossible. However, it was still Martial Uncle Xian Shu who made a move. At their level of cultivation, even if they use the weakest great technique, it's not something we can receive." No, it's not something we can receive either. But you've already received it." Lu Ping was too lazy to explain. If he hadn't comprehended the Lotus Protective Dipper with his natal magic treasure at the last moment, and blocked Spiritual Master Xian Shu's weakened mysterious heaven lightning drawing technique, Spiritual Master Xian Shu probably wouldn't have changed his mind and directly captured Yin Xian Shu and Ji Xian Xian. Even if Spiritual Master Lu Xianyuan arrived, the three of them wouldn't be Spiritual Master Xian Shu's match. Moreover, with Spiritual Master Lu Xuanyuan's personality, he wouldn't make a move against Spiritual Master Xian Shu. What Lu Ping didn't understand now was why Spiritual Master Xian Shu would say this. It must be known that this was not a glorious thing for Spiritual Master Xian Shu. Moreover, to add such a great halo to Lu Ping's head, it might not be a good thing for Lu Ping. "He's putting me on a fire to roast." Lu Ping didn't know why he thought of this sentence. "Oh right, Uncle Master Xian Shu has gone into seclusion. I heard that it's time for him to condense the third type of heaven and earth spiritual item and complete the Golden Dan." "Oh?" Lu Ping asked in surprise. "When did this happen?" Yao Yong said with uncertainty. "It should be not long after you were punished, right? It is said that Reverend Xian Shu even asked for punishment because he did not complete the task assigned by the sect to capture Junior Brother Yin. He recommended Martial Uncle Xian Chan to replace him as the person in charge of the sect's rules and discipline." "Martial Uncle Xian Chan? Then who is the cultivator guarding Dikuan Island now?" Yao Yong chuckled and said, "Who else could it be?" Dikuan Island is a medium-sized island at the forefront of our sect's fight against the demon race. Now that Martial Uncle Tianlin is once again guarding Huangli Island to deter the demon race, compared to Huangli Island, the small spirit mine on Xianqi Island no longer has any meaning for my master to guard it. This time, he might as well just guard Dikuan Island. Right now, he's basically living in seclusion. He'll probably reach the Dharma stage within 10 years. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Then I have to congratulate him. I've received a lot of care from Martial Uncle Chu, so when the time comes, I might as well give him a generous gift." With the addition of Laozu, our sect's position in the North Sea's cultivation world is becoming more and more stable. Yao Yong nodded in agreement and said, "You definitely have to give a generous gift. Although you're from the Chonghua Manor, you're different from your senior sisters. The sect also intends for you to form your own faction, so when the time comes, you'll naturally have to participate in the Dharma Manifestation Assembly in the name of your own abode." Lu Ping's expression didn't change, but his mind was racing. He maintained a smile on his face and asked, "Why do you say that?" Yao Yong said mysteriously, "I'm afraid that Martial Uncle Guo will advance to the Dharma Manifestation stage in the next 2 years. Martial Uncle Guo's level of cultivation is similar to my teacher's, but Martial Uncle Guo has accumulated more experience, so I'm afraid that he'll advance to the Dharma Manifestation stage first. In that case, he'll have to give up his position as the sect's administrator. As for the new administrator position, I don't know what the few Laozu are thinking, but they say that they want Marshal Uncle Tianling to take over the position again. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment, as if he was thinking about the reliability of Yao Yong's information. Then, he shook his head and said, "That's impossible. Our sect has never had a Dharma Laozu as the sect's administrator. Moreover, my teacher used to be the sect's administrator. How could he become Laozu now, and become an administrator again?" Yao Yong laughed and said, "When I heard this news, I also thought that it was impossible, but the person who said this is my teacher. Do you think I should believe it or not?" Lu Ping was silent for a while and said, "Why is it my teacher? Why is it Dharma Laozu?" Yao Yong scratched his head and said, "How would I know? But when my teacher said it unintentionally, his face looked serious, but he also seemed to be looking forward to it." Lu Ping sneered and said, "Then what's the reason for wanting me to form my own sect?" Yao Yong still shook his head and said, "Don't ask me. You also know that I've always been unwilling to think about these messy things. But my teacher said that the sect's administrators never pass on the inheritance between cultivators of the same sect." Lu Ping nodded thoughtfully, but he sneered at the first half of Yao Yong's words. Yao Yong's seemingly simple and honest appearance hid an extremely shrewd heart. Otherwise, Jinren Chu Xuanqing would never have let him say these words, and sure Lingling would not have been seduced by this guy. Although he guessed that Jinren Chu Xuanqing deliberately said this to him through Yao Yong, and he also guessed some things in his heart, he still could not see the whole picture. After all, Lu Ping's current position was not high enough. Although he had been able to participate in some of the high-level affairs of the sect with his own efforts, the ones who could really decide the fate of the sect were the 8 Dharma phase Laozu and a few Zenrins who had achieved the 7th grade or above Dharma phase stage. Although Zhonghua and Xiaoyao belonged to 2 different sects, they were one family. There were more than 10 third-generation disciples under the 2 Laozu who had reached the core forging stage. The 10 disciples of Zhonghua, including Jiang Xianxian, had all advanced to the core forging stage, except for the eldest disciple and the 5th disciple who had died. Among them, there were 4 who had reached the middle stage of the core forging stage. Although the Xiaoyao lineage was not as prosperous as the Zhonghua lineage, the 6 core forging stage disciples made many second-generation disciples feel inferior. How many core forging stage cultivators were there in the whole of Jinling? The total number of third-generation disciples of the 2 sects accounted for almost 1/10 of all the core forging stage cultivators in Jinling. This was definitely a force that could affect or restrict the future of the sect. To add fuel to the fire, what kind of monster was the 9th disciple of the Zhonghua lineage? He was surrounded by the elite force of the third-generation disciples of Jinling. They had fought against the demon clan in the deep sea for more than 10 years and had accumulated a large amount of wealth for Jinling. With the cultivation of the middle stage of the core forging stage, he was able to kill a demon cultivator in the late stage of the core forging stage and fight against the most tyrannical second-generation disciples in the late stage of the core forging stage. This person had too many halos. The high-level cultivators of Jinling thought carefully. From the top to the Dharma phase Laozu, such as Tian Kong, Tian Ling, and Tian Lin, in the middle, Liang Xianfeng, Chu Xuanqing, Gui Xianshan, Xiansen, and the deadly Xianin, not to mention the third-generation disciples. Almost all of the most elite people of Jinling had more or less received help or assistance from this disciple at a very important moment. They saw a kind of momentum in Lu Ping, a momentum that could sweep the whole sect when the conditions were ripe. With this kind of hidden momentum, how should Jinling deal with it? Lu Ping didn't know what kind of game and balance the sect had gone through, but he knew that under the rising momentum of Jinling, no one would do something that would hurt their own people and make their enemies happy. However, this didn't mean that no one would plot against them. Even when it came to dealing with Yin Xian, the sect had made 2 preparations. On the surface, they captured him to show the sects of the North Sea, and in the dark, they had Reverend Lu Xianyuan to inform them. Even at the last moment, Reverend Xianshu didn't kill Lu Ping. Facing Reverend Xianshu head-on, what an awe-inspiring strength! In fact, this was called praising to death. There were too many halos on Lu Ping, so many that some people had no choice but to take some measures, even if it was just in case. Reverend Xian Shu withdrew and went into closed-door training, leaving Lu Ping to face the consequences of the game between the sect's higher-ups. Tianling Laozu regained the position of Zhenling's deacon, but it broke the whole sect's inheritance system. Deacons in the late stage of core forging were housekeepers, and the decision-making power of the sect was never in the hands of the deacons. However, Fa Xiang Laozu became a deacon, who would still dare to think that she was a housekeeper. This was a sect master who wasn't the sect master. He wanted Lu Ping to set up another faction outside of Chonghua Manor. He wanted to separate the most potential inheritors from Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor, weakening the combined strength of the two factions. At the very least, he wanted to weaken the strength of the two factions in the future. Perhaps, this was the compromise condition for Tianling Grand Ancestor to return to the sect. Nowadays, it was an indisputable fact that Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor were strong in Jinling. Whether or not Lu Ping established a separate faction would not have any impact on the rise of the two factions, because Lu Ping had always been Lu Tianling's disciple, and he was indebted to Tianling's Laozu. However, hundreds of years later, when Lu Ping's disciples began to walk on the stage of Jinling, it was hard to say what the disciples of Lu Ping's faction, or the disciples of Xiaoyao Manor, would think. In fact, the reason was very simple. Lu Ping respected Tianling Laozu very much, but he didn't have much friendship with the disciples of Xiaoyao Manor. Thinking of this, Lu Ping was horrified. Could it be that when teacher and Grand Master fell out and reopened Chonghua Manor, it was also the result of this? However, what did Master Chu Xuanqing mean when he said, "The sect's deacons never pass on to the cultivators of the same faction"? What was he hinting at? The position of Zhenling's deacon was a position that was held by turns. It was to prevent one faction from becoming dominant. If Tianling Laozu became the deacon, then after Tianling Laozu retired, the disciples of Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor could not continue to take over this position. They could only wait for the next opportunity. But what if Lu Ping was not in Chonghua Manor? Lu Ping smiled. Although he didn't have the idea of getting involved in the deacon position, sometimes he really had no choice. When some people close to him needed his protection, what choice did he have? It was just that this kind of fate that was not in his control and arranged by others made Lu Ping very unhappy. Although the person who arranged this path for him might have good intentions, or maybe it was out of love, or maybe it was out of expectation, Lu Ping felt that at least he had to be willing. Chapter 490. Boy, you asked Xian Dian to call the old man here just to tell the old man that you killed the people from the Crystal Palace? Fornax Laozu looked at the Crystal Palace's high-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hand. His eyes couldn't help but emit a cold light, but Lu Ping could still clearly feel that Fornax Laozu didn't blame him much. On the contrary, he was more surprised by the high-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Of course not, Martial Uncle. Do you think the sect would dare to use this alchemy furnace? If not, this disciple will keep it for himself." Lu Ping pretended to take back the alchemy furnace in his hand. Fornax Laozu sighed and said, "Boy, speak, what do you want?" Lu Ping immediately asked in a serious tone, "Martial Uncle, how is Martial Uncle Xian Jing now?" Fornax Laozu glanced at him and said, "He is currently in seclusion. The sect has given him a task to refine 120 blood condensation pills and 600 blood refining pills. Although he has advanced to the late core forging stage, the sect Laozu still doesn't allow him to participate in the sect's decision-making." Lu Ping couldn't help but shiver. More than 700 furnaces of pills, even if they were only low-grade ones, Taoist Master Xian Jing would need 5 days to refine a furnace of pills. It would still take him 10 years to refine. Fortunately, Lu Ping's alchemy skills were now second only to Fornax Laozu in Jinling. Even if he wanted to refine these low-grade pills, the sect wouldn't let him waste his time on it. However, during the years of suppressing the earth fire, the sect wouldn't let him stay idle. Almost every half a month, the sect would assign a mid-stage or late-stage core forging pill refining task to him. This made Lu Ping a little confused as to why the Jinling sect had become so abundant. Of course, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't forget to take advantage of these tasks. For example, when refining mid-stage core forging pills, Lu Ping's success rate could reach 70% to 80%. Lu Ping would often deduct one pill from the batch. If he was lucky and refined 9 pills at once, Lu Ping wouldn't be polite and directly deduct 2 pills. Of course, the sect generally turned a blind eye to these things. Don't underestimate 1 or 2 pills. With Lu Ping's current status as an alchemy master, the pills he refined for cultivation had begun to become intermittent, let alone ordinary cultivators. Lu Ping initially thought the sect had discovered some ancient ruins in the past few years. But when he heard that enlightened Master Xian Jing, who was in closed-door meditation, was assigned such a low-grade alchemy mission, Lu Ping's intuition told him that things weren't as simple as they seemed. It sounded like they were preparing for something. Although Lu Ping had the qualifications to participate in the decision-making level of the sect, those who could really speak had to at least reach the height of Taoist Master Xian Shu and Taoist Master Xian Chang. Like Lu Ping, to put it bluntly, he was just an observer. He only had the right to know, but he had no right to make suggestions or choose. What's more, in the past few years, Lu Ping was punished to comb the fire vein at the earth fire vent. During this period, only Yao Yong occasionally came to see him. Hu Lili often came, but her status in the sect was far less than Yao Yong's. Taoist Master Xianqin was also not as good as Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing. They didn't know much about the sect's secrets, so Lu Ping couldn't get much information from them. As for his other companions, they were dignified core forging cultivators, elites among the third-generation disciples. Now, they were hiding among the low-level cultivators. Some chopped firewood, some dug mines, and some swept courtyards. No one knew them, and no one was willing to pay attention to them, so how much could they know? On the other hand, there was no news of this group of genius cultivators from Jinling in the North Sea for several years. On the North Sea rookie list, Lu Ping's deed of killing Taoist Master Lu Hai with one sword strike was still standing high, and no one dared to challenge him. The rankings of others like Ji Xianxian, Du Feng, and the others had all dropped below the top 50. On the other hand, after Yao Yong recovered from his injuries, he killed a middle-stage core forging demon cultivator during an underwater volcano eruption and obtained a low-grade earth step heaven spirit fire. After refining it, he advanced to the middle-stage core forging in one fell swoop. He was extremely arrogant, and now he had rushed into the top 25 on the rookie list. Countless thoughts flashed through Lu Ping's mind in an instant. Seeing that Fornax Laozu was still looking at him, he smiled and said, "Martial Uncle, I wonder if I can learn the soul-stealing secret technique created by Martial Uncle Xian Jing?" Fornax Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a strange expression. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was embarrassed and giggled foolishly. Fornax Laozu directly threw him a jade slip, picked up the high-grade pill furnace on the ground and walked away. At the same time, he examined the pill furnace and said, "Yes, but the quality of the pill furnace in the Crystal Palace is indeed high. In the future, it is possible to upgrade it to a top-grade pill furnace. But for now, I still need to find Tianjiang to picture this pill furnace." When Lu Ping saw that Fornax Laozu was afraid that he would regret it, he almost snatched the pill furnace away. Lu Ping hurriedly shouted behind him, "Martial Uncle, this pill furnace can be counted as a meritorious deed for the sect, right? Can you reduce the remaining year of sorting out the vein of earth fire?" Fornax Laozu said without turning his head, "This is not up to me. Your teacher personally said that if you don't stay here for 5 years, don't even think about coming out." Lu Ping was dumbfounded. After a long time, he said unconvinced, "Isn't this punishment set by Martial Uncle Tian Kong? How can it be teacher personally said so?" Even so, Lu Ping didn't dare to have any other ideas. He honestly prepared to stay in the mouth of the earth fire for 5 years. Lu Ping held a black jade slip in his hand. After carefully examining the contents, Lu Ping revealed a strange expression. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping took out a jade bottle and poured out an ordinary medicinal pellet. Then, he pointed at the mid-grade cauldron in front of him that he hadn't used for a long time. The cauldron was hovering above the earth fire vent, constantly spinning in the air. As Lu Ping pointed at it, a puff of white mist suddenly burst out from the cauldron. Then, 10 white, jade-like medicinal pellets flew out from the mist. Lu Ping casually put away the mid-grade cauldron and stored the medicinal pellets in a jade bottle, leaving only one in his hand. Then, he cast a few hand seals and struck the ordinary medicinal pellet he took out earlier. After that, a grayish gaseous substance floated up from the medicinal pellet. Lu Ping quickly made a few more hand signs. At the same time, he used his divine sense and true yuan to restrain the grayish gas. But as soon as the gas floated out of the pill, a lot of it disappeared. Although Lu Ping was fast enough, he still only pulled half of the gas. Then, Lu Ping carefully wrapped the remaining half of the gas around the white jade pill that he had just refined in his hand. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He cast a few more hand seals, and this time, they were aimed at the white jade pills. However, a small whirlpool suddenly appeared in the middle of the gray fog. All the gray fog continued to shrink and then gathered in the middle of the whirlpool. When the gray fog completely disappeared, the white jade pill that was previously wrapped in the gray fog was revealed. But this time, the white jade pill had turned into a gray pill. It was very similar to the pill that was poured out of the white jade bottle, but the color was a lot darker. What Lu Ping used was the soul-stealing secret technique created by Taoist Master Xian Jing. Speaking of which, Taoist Master Xian Jing was also a famous alchemy genius in Jinling. Otherwise, he would not have become one of the few alchemy masters in Jinling. However, Taoist Master Xian Jing's alchemy was a bit special. The height of his alchemy was greatly affected by his own cultivation. In other words, when Taoist Master Xian Jing's cultivation reached the middle stage of the core forging realm, his alchemy could at most refine pills in the middle stage of the core forging realm. This was very similar to Yu Jiangrui, the alchemy master that Lu Ping captured in the East China Sea. Because his cultivation could not be improved, Taoist Master Xian Jing's alchemy was also lingering at the level of refining pills in the middle stage of the core forging realm. In the end, he had no choice but to turn his attention to the only remaining spirit forging pill that Lu Tianling Laozi gave to the pill pavilion for research. This allowed him to create a secret technique that extracted part of the essence of the spirit forging pill without anyone noticing and helped him advance to the late stage of the core forging realm. If it wasn't for the incident with Taoist Master Liang Xianfeng, which was too coincidental, Taoist Master Xian Jing would have been able to avoid this matter. However, there was a flaw in this soul-stealing secret technique. It was unable to completely draw out the essence from the pill and pour it back into the spirit acceptance pill that was specially refined for this secret technique. There was always a part of the essence in the pill that would evaporate and disappear during the drawing process. Lu Ping used ordinary pills to perform the soul-stealing secret technique several times in a row. With Lu Ping's spiritual sense that was far superior to others, he only managed to reduce the loss of using the secret technique to about 30%. Just as Lu Ping was preparing to stay in this earth fire vent for another year, a ripple suddenly formed in the void in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and looked at the ripple quietly without saying anything. At this moment, the ripple suddenly split open into a pitch-black hole, and a jade slip appeared without warning at the crack. Lu Ping reached out and calmly took the jade slip in his hand. Then the black hole closed again and turned into a ripple. The ripple gradually stretched and the void returned to its original state. Lu Ping scanned the jade slip with his spiritual sense, and his face suddenly lit up. He got up and walked out of the earth fire vent. When Lu Ping got up, the earth fire that had been suppressed by him for 4 years suddenly lost its restriction. A pillar of fire as thick as a bucket suddenly poured into the fire-splitting plate and surged toward each alchemy room. As soon as Lu Ping came out of the earth fire vent, he heard a burst of crackling sounds in the 36 alchemy rooms. At least 13 alchemy rooms had exploded. Lu Ping smirked and said, "This method of controlling fire is still too weak. It doesn't even have this kind of emergency measure." A series of curses and roars came out, followed by someone pushing the door of the alchemy room aggressively. It seemed that he wanted to find the culprit who made the earth fire suddenly go berserk. For 4 years since that person suppressed the earth fire, the output of the earth fire in the pill pavilion had been stable for 4 years. Why did the earth fire suddenly go berserk today? Chapter 491. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed as he watched Sage Xianyan leave angrily but helplessly. The spirit cleansing pill. Sage Xianyan actually has the recipe for this pill. The spirit cleansing pill was an extremely rare pill used by late core forging cultivators to purify their bloodline and refine their true essence. This kind of pill could also be said to be used to solidify one's foundation. It was a pill that could indirectly help one reach a higher rank. Although there was no 3,000-year-old spirit herb used to refine this elixir, the difficulty of refining it was no less than that of a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir. Hence, this elixir was actually a late core forging stage elixir, but alchemists often categorized it as a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir. The spirit cleansing pill had not appeared in the North Sea for hundreds of years. The North Sea alchemists had thought that the recipe had been lost. Unexpectedly, Sage Xianyan had obtained the recipe. Lu Ping came to the back mountain of the elixir pavilion to bid farewell to Tianlu Laozu. Tianlu Laozu already knew about the jade slip. He simply waved his hand and told Lu Ping to scram. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping grinned and said, "Grand Master, do you have the recipe for the spirit cleansing pill? Can you give it to me?" How could Sage Xianyan's matter in the alchemy room be hidden from Tianlu Laozu? Tianlu Laozu kept a straight face and said, "The spirit cleansing pill recipe was given to the sect by Xianyan Flame. However, the task of refining this pill was not given to you. Even if you are one of the best alchemists in the sect, if you want to obtain this recipe, you will have to hand over something." This was the rule of Jinling. There was no such thing as a free lunch. However, rewards were never stingy. Lu Ping had no choice but to hand over the recipe for the divine accumulation pill to Tianlu Laozu. Fortuitous Furnace Laozu glanced at the jade slip, then looked at Lu Ping thoughtfully. "Oh, divine accumulation pill. This is the Liao clan's ancestral pill. It has a great effect on core forging stage cultivators. I didn't expect you to have it. Although it is not as good as the spirit cleansing pill, you are an alchemy grandmaster." Lu Ping took the spirit cleansing pill recipe from Fornax Laozu and was about to leave when he heard Fornax Laozu say helplessly, "Kid, what are you planning to do with the spirit cleansing pill recipe in your hands?" This question was a bit awkward for Lu Ping in the pill pavilion, or rather, for Lu Ping and the sect. If it was any other pill recipe, it would be fine. Which alchemy grandmaster didn't have a few secret pill recipes? However, although the spirit cleansing pill was not as good as the spirit forging pill, it was still a pill that many people coveted. It was a taboo pill for those who possessed it. The spirit forging pill could increase the rank of a gold core. Although the spirit cleansing pill had little effect on late core forging stage cultivators who were condensing a spirit treasure for the third time, it was very useful for cultivators who were refining a spirit cleansing pill for the first and second time. This kind of thing could only be kept in the hands of a sect. In fact, when Lu Ping saved Liang Xianfeng, he had already thought of this situation. The sect would never give up on the spirit cleansing pill recipe. Although Lu Ping was a Jinling Grandmaster, there was a fundamental difference between giving the recipe to the pill pavilion and placing it in the pill pavilion's inheritance. Of course, the sect would never let Lu Ping suffer a loss. On the contrary, they would reward him heavily as an example. Lu Ping thought for a moment and smiled. "Grand Marshal Uncle, I'm sure you know how many spirit herbs are needed to concoct small forged spirit pellets. How many cauldrons of spirit herbs do you think we can gather with our sex resources? Fornax Laozu shook his head and sighed. It's difficult. Let's not talk about the other spirit herbs. The spirit cleansing pill is an imitation of the spirit cleansing pill's vitality dew. The sect can only gather 7 or 8 portions without affecting the other pills. If we add other spirit herbs, it will take at least 5 years to recover. I'm afraid the sect will run out of high-grade pills. Lu Ping shrugged helplessly and said, It's not like the sect can refine the spirit cleansing pill right now. So what if it's a while later? I'll have to give the recipe to the sect eventually. It's just that now is not the time. Lu Ping left the pill pavilion and thought to himself. Fortunately, I'm the only one who can use the technique of refining spiritual water. Only Wu Lily and I know about the heart-dissolving pill and the heart-forging pill. The half of the spirit-cleansing pill and the myriad wonder dew are secrets I've kept to myself. Otherwise, who knows what kind of uproar the sect would cause. It's all because I'm not strong enough. Lu Ping set the compass in the teleportation formation in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. A white light engulfed Lu Ping, and when he reappeared, he was already in a world of ice and snow. Compared to the first time Lu Ping had come to Frost Island, the place had changed greatly. The ice and snow that covered the entire island had been transformed into various buildings by the cultivators of the North Sea. Many cultivators could be seen walking or flying to and fro the island from time to time. On the eastern side of the island, below the cliff, was the secret medium-scale spirit mine that Lu Ping had discovered. Lu Tianling and Laozu had already built a rather large palace of ice and snow there. The palace was almost as large as the main and branch mines of the underground medium-scale spirit mine. As a result, such a large commotion had indeed aroused the suspicions of the other sects and clans. However, under the secret investigation of the cultivators from the other sects, they finally found out that Jinling had actually discovered a mine with a sizable amount of ice-type spiritual materials. Jinling's Vice Hall Master, Sage Enigma Flame, had been secretly stationed in this ice palace for the past few years. He was in charge of the mining of ice-type spiritual materials. All the sects secretly scolded Jinling for being cunning and taking everything for himself. Many sects proposed to share the profits, intending to divide up the spirit material mine. Lu Tianling and Laozu did not fall for this. All of their demands were in opposition. The mighty Dharma Laozu put on a desperate stance as if he wanted the mine, as if he had to crawl over Laozu's dead body, forcing Laozu from the various sects to refrain from taking action. Although the various sects were unwilling, falling out with Jinling just because of this spirit material mine was making a mountain out of a molehill. At this time, the Crystal Palace intended to support their own representative in the North Sea, and Xianling's sect continued to suppress the rising Jinling. The two clans hit it off and acted out the show of besieging Tianling Mountain. Laozu of the various sects watched from the sidelines, with the intention of teaching Jinling a lesson. However, to everyone's surprise, Laozu shook the North Sea with the power of a mid-Dharma adept. For a moment, the various sects no longer had any thoughts about this spirit material mine. Of course, the premise was that the various sects did not know that there was a medium-sized spirit stone mine below this spirit material mine. Otherwise, when the news of Jinling monopolizing a medium-sized spirit stone mine spread, the various sects of the North Sea would probably step over Lu Tianling and Laozu's dead body to snatch it from Jinling's hands. When Lu Tianling and Laozu saw Lu Ping, they immediately snorted coldly, causing Lu Ping's entire body to shiver. Then, he said, "You've been burned by the earth fire for 4 years. You're already dry, aren't you?" Lu Ping respectfully replied, "Teacher, your disciple's heart has become calmer. I've learned to hide my strength and bide my time. I've also learned to plot openly and compromise." Lu Tianling and Laozu revealed a hint of a smile at the corner of their lips, but they still said coldly, "You're still salvageable. This time, the sect will be sending a few third-generation disciples who have reached the 6th level of the core forging realm to the East Sea for training. I know that you seem to have some business in the East Sea, so you can go with them." Lu Ping respectfully agreed. Thinking about how he hadn't seen his 3 senior sisters in Tianling Mountain for many years, He wanted to ask about them, but his teacher had not said anything. Thus, Lu Ping also suppressed the thought of asking. However, Lu Tianling and Lao Tzu seemed to have seen through Lu Ping's thoughts, and directly said, "Your second, third, and fourth senior sisters were sent to the East Sea by me a few years ago. This time, they will also meet up with Uncle Master Tian Xiang in the Fallen Secret Territory. Your strength far exceeds your 3 senior sisters, and your second senior sister is now also at the 6th level of the core forging realm. When the time comes, you will need to do your best to help." Lu Tianling and Lao Tzu paused, as if thinking of something, and said in a low voice, "If you meet that person and she makes things difficult for you, you don't have to endure it. Just do your best to fight back. Uncle Master Tian Xiang will not let you suffer." Lu Ping wanted to pretend to be confused, but he heard his teacher laugh and say, "You sly fellow, you don't have to pretend to be obedient in front of your teacher. You have always been smart, and I'm afraid you already know a lot about this in secret. I won't hide it from you. Now that our sect seems to be doing well, it is actually very dangerous. Dharma adepts are the foundation of the sect, and with the addition of Dharma adept Lao Tzu, it means that the sect's foundation is even deeper, so she wants to come back. It's just that this person has always been arrogant, so she will definitely put on a good show to raise her status. The more you make her suffer, the more she will want to come back and compete with me. So if you have any skills, just use them. This person will not bother to do it herself." Lu Ping chuckled and did not say anything else, but in his heart he was cursing. "Teacher, you want to understand the matters of the previous generation from the younger generation? What is going on? Even if you want to understand, aside from the fallen big senior sister and 5th senior sister, there are still 6 other senior sisters. How could it be possible for a stinky 9th brother like me to come forward?" Unfortunately, his teacher had personally given the order, clearly not allowing Lu Ping to escape. Lu Ping could only pinch his nose and accept it. He went to the depths of the mind to visit the ragged Shirlingaling, Zhong Jian, and Ma Yu. Seeing Lu Ping, Sage Enigma Flame specially allowed them to rest for a day. Zhong Jian acted as if he had seen a family member and gave Lu Ping a bear hug. Then, he started complaining. Lu Ping looked carefully and saw that Shirlingaling and Ma Yu were still fine. On the other hand, Zhong Jian appeared to have changed. From a jade-faced scholar, he had become a beefy man. Seeing that, Lu Ping could not stop himself from smiling. "Senior brother Zhong, don't complain. You are becoming more like a real man." Zhong Jian sighed and said, "I am doing the work of 3 people. My primary energy is sealed. I can only force myself to cultivate, but I cannot do anything else. Not to mention, I also have to suffer the ridicule of the juniors. There is still 1 year left." When the time comes, I, your senior brother, will definitely teach those juniors a lesson. Zhong Jian had only just finished speaking when he saw Shirlingaling and Lu Ping laughing happily. Ma Yu, who was beside them, had a bashful look on her face. Immediately, Zhong Jian recalled something and scolded Lu Ping. "What do you mean by acting like a real man? I, your senior brother, have always been a real man, all right?" After chatting with the 3 of them for a long time, telling them about their experiences. After that, Lu Ping requested a favor from the 3 of them before rushing back to Huangli Island. There, he bumped into Fang Tao, who said happily, "Boss, it's good that you are back. I, Tianlin Lao Tzu, have been looking for you." Chapter 492. Lu Ping gave Fang Tao a few tasks and 3 items to him. Then, Lu Ping walked towards Tianlin Lao Tzu's residence. Lu Ping looked in surprise at the 2 people welcoming him at the entrance, and hurriedly said to the person in front, "Senior brother Xian Tian, you are here as well. Could this be?" Spiritual Master Xian Tian pointed at a dignified and beautiful woman beside him and said, "Yes, this is your senior sister-in-law, my Dao partner, Xian Hui." Lu Ping hurriedly bowed and the 3 of them walked into the cave dwelling. Tianlin Laozu saw Lu Ping come in and asked, "You went to Frost Island?" Lu Ping answered yes. Tianlin Laozu nodded, his face expressionless. He said, "This time, the people going to the East Sea are all third-generation disciples who have been stuck at the late stage of the core forging realm for dozens of years. Your senior brother Xian Tian and senior sister Xian Hui will also be going. When you get there, just listen to senior uncle Tian Xiang's instructions. The East Sea is far richer than the North Sea, and there are many extraordinary people there. You must be careful." Teacher had already said this before, so Lu Ping had no choice but to agree again. Ancestor Tianlin continued, "Kid Lu, I know you've always been rich, and your strength isn't any weaker than Xian Tian and Xian Hui. If you're able to help this time, please lend your senior brother and sister a hand." Lu Ping's expression was strange. The meaning behind these words was similar to what teacher had said, as if he was certain that he could help. Then, it was about that person's request. As expected, Ancestor Tianlin pondered for a moment and said, "Listening to junior brother Xuanfeng's words, it seems like you already know quite a bit about Xian Qin and even got to know her two disciples by chance?" Lu Ping didn't know what Tianlin Laozu was going to say next. Could it be that he was going to fight back as teacher said? Thus, he could only reply, "Yes, this disciple knows Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting, as well as Li Xiuzhu, who is also a disciple of Marshall and Xian Qin." Lu Ping could sense that when he mentioned Zhu Xianmeng, Taoist Master Xian Hui, who was standing beside him, seemed a little strange. Tianlin Laozu glanced at Xian Hui, then, as if weighing his words, said, "This trip to the East Sea, in addition to an opportunity for a third-generation disciple to break through to the late core forging stage, there is another important matter, which is the return of Xian Qin. She is now also a Dharma adept. Back then, she left in a fit of anger. Now that she has returned, she will definitely do something to you and the others. Just let her have her way." Lu Ping now understood the purpose of his trip to the East Sea. Originally, he was also wondering why the third-generation disciples, who were stuck at the 6th level of the core forging stage, were only going to bring him along. Now, he discovered that the sect was going to send Taoist Master Xian Qin, or should he be called Tianqin Laozu's punching bag. He was Lu Tianling's proud disciple, and he had even concealed his identity when they met in the Eastern Sea. Just these 2 points alone were enough for Lu Ping to know that he had firmly attracted all of Ancestor Sky Qin's hatred. He would definitely provoke this demon girl to torture him in 1,000 ways, perhaps even all the way to the Northern Sea. With Lu Ping as a punching bag, Tianqin Laozu's return to the sect would definitely be a lot less troublesome. Jinling was naturally happy about this. As long as he could bring this Dharma Laozu, the alchemy grandmaster, back to the sect, he, Lu Ping, deserved to suffer these grievances. Not to mention, this guy originally had 1 year of punishment left in the earth fire vent. This trip to the East Sea was just to change the method of punishment. Lu Ping secretly laughed. Teacher's meaning is not to suffer losses, but master's meaning is to submit to adversity. It seems that teacher's method is better, but I can only use teacher's method. I don't want to be a punching bag for nothing. Lu Ping bid farewell to Tianlin Laozu. Xiantian sent Lu Ping out of the cave. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Senior brother Xiantian, this time, are all the third-generation disciples who have reached the 6th level of the core forging stage going? What is the opportunity to break through?" Taoist Xiantian smiled bitterly. "Naturally, not everyone is going. As far as I know, there are 10 third-generation disciples who have reached the 6th level of the core forging stage, but this time, only 7 of us are going. The 7 of us have been at the 6th level for decades, or even hundreds of years. The reason why we have been stuck at the 6th level for so many years, other than the fact that breaking through to the late core forging stage is a huge chasm, everyone is actually accumulating their strength. The 7 of us are all planning to at least condense a 7th grade golden core in the future and become Dharma adepts. If we want to do this, then we must smelt a low-grade heaven-level spirit treasure when we are at the 9th level of the core forging stage, This way, when we advance to the mid-core forging stage, we must condense at least 2 mid-grade Earth-level spirit treasures. This is only the minimum requirement. However, the fact is that the 7 of us do not have enough inner yuan, so we are unable to reach the standard of refining mid-grade Earth-level spirit treasures. Even if we manage to reach the mid-core forging stage, we have not prepared 2 sets of Earth-level spirit treasures. Lu Ping carefully pondered over Taoist Xuantian's information. After a long time, he asked, "Is it so difficult to advance to the late core forging stage?" Taoist Xuantian smiled bitterly. "Junior brother Lu is a genius." "Perhaps it is not difficult for you, but I have been a disciple of Master for nearly 200 years, and I have practiced for more than 250 years. However, I have only been at the 6th level of the core forging stage for 60 years. Although Xian Hui is not like me, she has also been at the 6th level for nearly 40 years. The difficulty of breaking through to the late core forging stage is obvious." Lu Ping was a little incredulous. "Senior brother, you have 60 years of accumulation. Isn't that enough?" Taoist Xiantian nodded. "That is correct. In fact, with Junior Brother's current foundation, it is enough to refine 2 mid-grade Earth Step Spirit items. In the past, Junior Brother had some fortuitous encounters, and with Master's help, I have 2 mid-grade Earth Step Spirit items. However, Junior Brother is not willing to give up so easily. In this trip to the East Sea, I want to see if I can find a suitable high-grade Earth Step Spirit item. If I can obtain one, Junior Brother will have a higher chance of reaching the 7th grade." After asking Taoist Xiantian some questions regarding cultivation, Lu Ping bid farewell to Taoist Xiantian. Lu Ping hurriedly returned to his cave residence. Seeing Hu Lili waiting for him, he opened his mouth and asked, "Are you planning to break through to the mid-core forging stage?" Hu Lili thought that Lu Ping was just asking casually, so she said, "Yes, I was quite lucky. Last time, I helped Master and a few other practitioners to explore some ruins, and we gained quite a bit. Master rewarded me with a high-grade Earth Step Ebony Heart. Now that I am at the peak of the 3rd stage of the core forging stage, I can use it to refine this Ebony Heart." Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Don't rush, it's just a high-grade Earth Step Spirit item. If you refine it now, when you advance to the late core forging stage, you can only refine mid-grade Earth Step Spirit items at most. In the future, it will be difficult for you to advance to the Dharma stage. The first time you refine a spirit item, it should at least be a low-grade Earth Step Spirit item, or at least 2 high-grade Earth Step ones. Otherwise, you won't be able to reach a high-grade Golden Core in the future." After hearing Lu Ping's words, Hu Lili suddenly fell silent. Lu Ping was a little puzzled, but then he saw Hu Lili raise her head and say quietly, "Can I also become a Dharma adept in the future? None of our sex array practitioners have ever reached the Dharma stage. I heard from Master that even the big sects in East Sea and Central Plains rarely have array practitioners who have reached the Dharma stage." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Only then did he realize that it was even harder for array formation cultivators to advance to the Dharma realm than alchemists. Lu Ping had never thought about this problem before. In Hu Lili's eyes, smelting Earth-grade spirit items to advance to the Dharma realm in the future was basically a dream. Lu Ping said seriously, "Don't worry, no array practitioner in our sect has ever advanced to the Dharma stage, so you will be the first. Now, there is no need to rush to advance to the mid-core forging stage. First, you should build up your foundation. I still have a minor forging panacea in hand, so I have to rush to the 7th grade Golden Core. There is no reason for me to be afraid before the battle begins." Hu Lili looked at Lu Ping and nodded vigorously, saying, "I believe you." Because Lu Ping had to go on a long journey again, he had to entrust everything to Hu Lili. Originally, Hu Lili wanted to break through to the mid-core forging stage. Without her to look after Huangli Island, Chen Lian and the others were punished to reflect on their mistakes. Even though Tianlin Laozu was in charge, he would not care about the trivial matters of Huangli Island. It turned out that Hu Lili wanted to invite perfected Lu Xianyuan to take charge, but this time Lu Ping stopped her, so she did not have to trouble perfected Lu Xianyuan anymore. Lu Ping then went to grab Yao Yang's strong men. Unexpectedly, after perfected Chu Xuanqing took charge of Dikuan Island, Yao Yong was left to take charge of Xianqi Island. Lu Ping had no choice but to refine 2 batches of blood-condensing elixirs and exchange Zhang Xuanqing with perfected Xianyuan from the side yard. He asked Zhang Xuanqing, who was gradually recovering from his injuries, to assist Hu Lili in managing Huangli Island. After thinking about it, Lu Ping was still worried, so he sent 3 sound-transmitting magic swords to perfected Lu Xianyuan, his 6th senior sister, perfected Qin Xianwei, and 7th senior sister, perfected Xianhua, asking them to help look after Huangli Island when he was not around. After arranging the matters on Huangli Island, Lu Ping called De Bao out from an unknown corner of Huangli Island. Then, he took Sam Ling and Lu Dagui with him and disappeared above the sea that was covered by the night. 5 years ago, there was an incident that happened in the North Sea's cultivation world. It was the North Sea's alchemy aristocratic family, the Liao family, who had clashed with the Overflowing Seas sect for some unknown reason. First, the Overflowing Seas sect accused the Liao family of attacking their camp. Then, without waiting for the Liao family to defend themselves, the Overflowing Seas sect had already ransacked the meticulously cultivated spirit herb gardens on the 18 miniature islands that the Liao family controlled. Dozens of Liao family's low-level cultivators were killed. The North Sea Liao family fought back, but the Overflowing Seas sect was too powerful. The Liao family was forced to retreat again and again. At the same time, they sought support from the various sects of the North Sea. Unexpectedly, before the sects of the North Sea could express their stance, the North Sea cultivators who had been stirred up by the Overflowing Sea sect's actions all these years launched a surprise attack on the Overflowing Seas sect. The Overflowing Seas sect was caught unprepared, and dozens of cultivators perished. Among them were even core forging cultivators. For a time, the Overflowing Seas sect became the target of scorn in the North Sea. However, after the Overflowing Seas sect retreated, the North Sea cultivators suddenly realized that the Overflowing Seas sect had disappeared without a trace. No matter how hard the North Sea cultivators searched, they could not find a single cultivator from the Overflowing Seas sect. They could only leave the matter unsettled. Under the shroud of the night, Lu Ping finally arrived at Autumn Cloud Island, the place he had been to decades ago. Looking at the island in front of him, Lu Ping laughed coldly in his heart. With the so-called North Sea's local powers as cover, who would have thought that the Overflowing Seas sect would be hiding here? Who knows, Xianling's sect might have joined the ranks of those who are harboring the Overflowing Seas sect. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.